claim you're African, that you're going to get your mind back.
If a generalized black woman is doing this and being this, that is that is irresponsible.
No,
when you claim you're African, that you're going to get your mind
showing
back.
me,
Black and proud. Claim you're African, black and proud.
I think that if
as
a person who has a page,
what is the status of people with half FBA?
When you claim you're African, you're going to get your mind back.
That's why I was laughing, because I am
claim you're African.
I'm not saying the framework doesn't do a thing, but
become a part of it.
We've been
forward to black men
become a part of it.
Being in the control. We
become a part of it.
Only
embrace it.
That those one of the best stories I've ever heard.
Embrace it. When you claim you're African, you're going to get your mind
that
back.
mental growth takes place. You've been misled by leadership, for instance, that think that you can consume.
When you claim you're African, you're going to get your mind back. Black and I'm proud. Claim you're African. Black and I'm proud. I'm telling you.
Peace and power, family. Dr. Daw back in the building. I'm hoping that you all can hear me. It's been a while since I've been on. But family, I'm excited to be back. Make sure as you come in the building, you like up the video, you share this video, you get it out there in the hemisphere. Something like that, right? But nonetheless, today's topic, I'm just going to jump right in. I'm just going to jump right in. Special guest. I'm excited about the conversation. Doing something a little different. Typically, I have an in the studio guest, but today I'm bringing on a powerful brother, and we actually got a bonus guest today. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a powerful dialogue. And again, I don't know how it's going to go, but I know it's going to be something. You know what I mean? So nonetheless, the title of today is Diaspora and Gender Wars. FBA, the Black Diaspora, and the attack on Black male studies with brother Rakeem Shabazz. And special guest today, we're going to add Dr. Myron Clay Gilmore. I hope I got the name right. But nonetheless, family, just go ahead. I had a beautiful time out in Jamaica, out in the, not on the reservation. I'm calling the reservation, not on the resort, but out there with the people, my wife's peoples and people all in the community and things. And it was a beautiful time. And maybe we'll talk about a little bit of that today as well, as we speak about these diaspora wars. But I was away, and some people said, man, you know what's going on? There's a lot going on out here. They said there's a lot going on out here. I think some people sent me something about the sister Tasha K. So I see that Baba Small had put out something that I don't think I've seen too many people give attention to it, but I think it was a very powerful, and I'm not saying, some of us, we talk about the facts of a thing sometimes, but I'm saying I still think it was a very powerful piece that Baba Small put out. But nonetheless, family, with no further ado, I'm going to bring to the stage my dear brother. Maybe I just do it like this. Maybe my dear brothers. Let me just do it like that. They came in together, and we're going to just bring them up together. My dear brothers, peace and power to you two brothers. What's happening? How y'all doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, man. Peace.
Yeah, man. My bad. I had you on mute, but yeah, thank you for the invite. Definitely an honor to be here, man, and looking forward to the conversation. Also wanted to just shout you out and appreciate the work that you're doing. You know what I'm saying? Having these conversations and the work that you're doing locally, man. It's much needed. Appreciate
it. So with no further ado, I'm just going to jump in, brother. I'm going to ask you, brother Rakeem Shabazz, and I think we're going to have make sure Dr. Clay Gilmore next week. So I'm going to jump in. That's right, Dr. Gilmore, right? Dr. Clay Gilmore, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, we can make it a family affair, however y'all want to do it. But nonetheless, what I want to say, I want to ask the question, tell the people a little bit about yourself. Now, I'll be real honest. I've seen you probably for years. I think I've seen you for years. I mean, it may be different iterations, perhaps, but if you could, tell the
Yeah.
people a little bit about yourself. Tell the people, I always say, tell the people why you're essential to the conversation.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, yeah, my name is Rakeem Shabazz, the host of Was the Dome TV, which is a platform that I created about 4 or 5 years ago that just centers everything Black, from our politics, revolutionary politics, history, culture, art, spirituality. And I like to have these conversations with, scholars and organizers and artists. Also, I am co-host with Dr. Clay Gilmore here for a podcast called Algorithms of Empire, the University of
Mm.
Toronto Center of Ethics YouTube page, and it's a part of a bigger thing with the Clay Gilmore Institute for Philosophy, Technology, and Counterinsurgency. And so, what we do there is, we have these conversations with experts in the fields of AI, military, you know, military technology, counterinsurgency, and we show how these new technologies that are emerging here in this AI revolution technology, this technology revolution, how they are used to uh, maintain a social order at home and abroad, right? And how it affects Black people, Black communities, and places in the global South. And so yeah, man, and also, and so I sit on the board of that, but that is the creation of Dr. Clay Gilmore. So definitely an honor to do that. I grew up a 5%er. Um, yeah, I've worked a lot with back in the days with Lone Star RBG, a lot of different organizations. I'm just somebody that does a lot of reading, and likes to have these conversations, but also feel the need and understands why we have to have these conversations because of the times that we live in, man. It's now or never.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Dr. Gilmore, Clay Gilmore, since you're here, I might as well ask you to tell the people a little about yourself as well.
Oh yeah, of course, of course.
Why you essential? Why you essential to being a bonus guest?
Oh yeah, hey, well, hey, like Rakeem said, me and him do a podcast together. Algorithms of Empire, with the Clay Gilmore Institute and the University of Toronto. So I'm actually a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Toronto right now, in the Institute for the History of Philosophy of Science and Technology. And as a Black male study scholar, this is where my research is. So not only in some of the, foundational questions of the field, but looking specifically at counterinsurgency and technology. And, I'm lucky enough to run across Rakeem. I remember when he first invited me to do a podcast. I was very averse to it, doing any type of public work out, so, but I'm lucky to do it with him. And as far as my personal life, like I said, I introduce myself all the time as a father, and a husband. When I was young, I joined the Marine Corps. So, I joined the Marine Corps. That was my first job. I got out, I started studying philosophy, and I'm doing my PhD. I'm a first generation. And my work through the Clay Gilmore Institute tries to bring forth their legacy. As far as I know, it is the first Black philosophical institute dedicated to the study of what we think of as racism as actual warfare.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that. Appreciate you two joining me today on this conversation, and your introductions. And we can talk more about different things as we go along. But let me say this: I've reached out to Brother Shabazz some time ago, and typically I do most of my guests in the studio. But since they are so far away, if they were in DC, I'd be like, look, we're gonna have to make it happen. If they were in Philly, we're gonna have to make it happen, but just because they're so far away, I say let's do this. But I might do a little bit more of this because I just think is pertinent that we do. So the title family of tonight's broadcast is Diaspora and Gender Wars, FBA, the Black Diaspora, and the attack on Black male studies. Let's start out with what, let me just put this because I didn't run this title past any of you before I put it out there. I did kind of like I sent it to you, but I didn't have enough time to let the ink dry before I put it out there. But nonetheless, when you think about that particular title, what comes up for you?
For me, I think it's intellectual warfare and war of narration, right, and war of narrative. And so, right now, when we look at this 24-hour news cycle, and we can see all of the things that are affecting our communities and different um, communities of color and communities in the global South, it's like we are fighting a battle as you for those who have studied counterinsurgency for the hearts and minds of the people to give them
Mhm.
a revolutionary consciousness because there are forces at play that are trying to lead them in the wrong direction. And so like whenever I saw the title, obviously the one of the first things in the title is diaspora and gender wars, and then FBA, right? And as you know, I have been also one of the people who have been highly critical of them over the years and their xenophobic rhetoric. And so the first thing I thought was them, right? And the idea and the bigger context of empire. And one of the thoughts that I had was I've never, and I'm not talking about the people, I'm not talking about the communities within America, I'm talking about America as an empire, as a
Mhm.
hegemonic empire
Mhm.
that creates death and destruction at home and abroad. I have never seen anyone from FBA or ADOS advocate for the crumbling of empire, right?
Mm.
And so I started to think
Mhm.
whenever you sent me the title, how can you not consistently, I mean, well, you can't consistently
Mhm.
justify a nativist position, right? Without minimizing or ignoring the destruction America produces around the world. We have revolutionary scholars that we have studied in the past, and they were either going to be black nationalists, Pan African, socialist, communist, but they saw that these frameworks as a pathway to liberation. It just so happens FBA and ADOS are against all of those. They're not
Mm.
black nationalists. They're not for the Republic of New Africa. They're not
Mhm.
they're not for being called a new or being referred to as a new African. They
Mhm.
are we know how much against Pan Africanism they are, right?
Mhm. Yes, sir.
And they're also against socialism, communism, Marxist Leninism because I've seen the conversations, and then you hear them talk, and they are actually proponents of capitalism and the other systems of oppression that the revolutionaries in the past taught us that this is what we had to fight, right?
Mm.
So first thing that
Mhm.
I don't know, the first thing that I thought was about that, right? And how they attempt to justify a nativist position, and the way they do that is with the xenophobic rhetoric that they often kick. And we'll get into some of their talking points as the conversation goes, but yeah, that was one of the first things I thought. Like, how do they consistently justify their position? And the way they do that is aligning themselves with empire and ignoring the harm that America causes to original people at home and abroad.
Mm.
And
I
I see
think.
some. And so look, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to watch the comments, but how about the rhetoric Africans have for Black Americans? See, this is see, this is obviously one of the talking points that they consistently use online. But when we talk about our personal experiences, right, especially in the growing up here in America, Black communities always had African Americans, Caribbean Americans, uh, brothers from the continent. I even saw a study once, probably a few years ago, that talked about continental Africans who come here as immigrants um, are more likely to hire African Americans when they're in positions of when they're in managerial positions than white Americans are, right? And so
Mm.
we understand that there might be some different cultural expressions due to the fact that, hey, your Africanity was expressed in Haiti, my Africanity was
Mhm.
expressed in Texas, yours might be straight from the continent in Ghana, right?
Mhm.
But we've always understood that we come from the same root, right? And so when we talk about Africans that don't like us, you may see a few on Twitter or social media that call us lazy or call us akata. If we use that same standard to say, hey, we're not going to deal with no Africans, then we would have to use that same standard for ourselves. And we know that as African Americans, we still have issues with each other that we are striving to work out, right? And
Mhm. Mhm.
so I don't buy the whole, Africans disrespect us, so we have to create not only an identity, but an identity that is opposed to an ideology. And that ideology is Pan Africanism or Black nationalism. You know what I'm saying? And so to me, it's just one of the talking points that they continue to circulate. Again, we'll get into more of those talking points as the conversation progresses.
I appreciate that.
Mhm.
I mean, and I know this might be a little. I was just thinking today as I was reading. I think I was reviewing the Wretched of the Earth again, and a thought came to my mind, and I know some people might debate me on this, but I don't. It doesn't matter. We won't debate it today, though. So that identity wars, or what I'm calling like this intersectional approach, that might be even better. Because when I mean identity and these identity wars, I'm talking about this intersectional approach to what people believe is freedom, liberation, or whatever the heck they think it is. It's counterinsurgents.
Mm.
And I did a dissertation. My dissertation is in Black identity. So sometimes I realize when I'm speaking about identity, people sometimes don't understand that there's layers to identity. And then I'm also teaching academia. In teaching academia, especially at the master's and the PhD level, you begin to see that these identities are really serious and they're being weaponized against one another. And FBA, because they asked the question to me, some people asked the question, some of our brothers and sisters, how is he connecting FBA with feminist movements? How's he saying there's similarities? See, because the thing is, people are getting triggered by me saying feminist because they want to use the word feminist. When I say feminism, I'm speaking about mainstream feminism. I'm talking about intersectional feminism. I'm even talking about Black feminism to a degree. But look, when you start to go off and start saying, well, what about revolutionary? Well, you use the name. Now we have to talk about that. If you decide that you want to use that name, then you have to deal with it. Now, you when I say feminist, I didn't say radical Black, radical revolutionary feminism, but I do understand because I talk to people, and I'm saying even those who don't use those labels, even like those in our community who don't espouse or don't study Tariq Nasheed, I'm sorry, y'all, or the FBA movement, they still begin to get these ideas begin to seep in their minds, whether or not they study it or not. And people believe that what goes on in academia stays in academia, and that is false. They believe the theory stays in academia, and theory is only about what you do in academia. No, academia actually picks up what even comes out of the community. And that is why I argue against this idea of FBAism, because it will, and it has in many ways, and it will continue to try to seep itself into being something relevant. And it will try to make itself relevant through an academic lens. But nonetheless, Dr. Myron Clay Gilmore, what you got anything to say?
You know, I really like I really like your comments, man. I really did. Because when I see the title, that's what I think about. It's two angles of divide and conquer. Right? I mean, and this is how Black populations are generally governed and conquered by Western populations and ruling white populations. They divide them. And so I think about the lack of synchronicity, in the Black mind. Like when you read the rich tradition of Black people in the Americas, North and South America, when you read that tradition of revolt and self-redefinition and resistance, and then you look at us today, I think especially after the 1950s, there's such a lack of synchronicity that, on the one hand, we can't be just Black, right? That's not enough. We have to be Black and American. Right? Then we have an appeal that matters, a political program that matters. Black power doesn't mean anything anymore, right? And then on the other hand, with the attack on Black male studies, what you see is, the university really be an extension of the church, right? So to question the basic assumptions of Black feminist theory, to question the pontificating that you get in a university of basic stereotypes of Black men as homophobic, as harmful to women, as against children, beating children. These things are not new. The slave masters wrote these things. But when the new academic comes and give a new name to it, we're supposed to take it serious. And if you question it, heresy. So when I look at the two, I think they fit together real nicely. I always reference this book, The Book of Five Rings, by Miyamoto Musashi. He's a really, really famous samurai in the 16th century. And he writes in one of his scrolls about knocking the heart out of the enemy, knocking the will to fight out of the enemy. And when I see the FBA, which when I see it, I always giggle, because Tariq called me Jamaican. He called me Jamaican because I disagree with him one day. I always giggle like that.
You say he said he's Jamaican? What do you say?
No, he called me Jamaican.
Oh, he called you Jamaican. Okay.
Yeah. I disagree with him. I became Jamaican, So, I always laugh at that. But, I really see it as a product of ADOS, right? They're really a derivative spin-off of what a deeper attempt at molding Black politics away from, like Rakeem said, one of his base concepts. You can read this going back to the 1830s. Pan-Africanism comes from the diaspora.
Yep.
This is not debatable.
Absolutely.
But they want us to reject our basic impulses. And I think that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the heart knocked out of the Black diaspora at a certain moment of American imperial reign and superiority. That's what I think about when I see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just like to add quickly too. It's like, I think of the quote when Eldridge Cleaver talked about how if you don't see African America as an internal colony, your analysis of our condition will always be off. And the idea that we have the ability to assimilate, especially as Black men, assimilate into a system that has made us the number one targets for death is interesting to say the least. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I appreciate. Who did you say that quote was? I'm multitasking. Pardon me.
Eldridge Cleaver. I was paraphrasing.
Okay, yeah, and I appreciate that, right? Because I think that is where much of the confusion lies. I mean, I'm not even suggesting by any means that people want to see anything any more clearer. Let me just be clear. Some people do, some people are confused, and some people are willfully doing so. So, and a lot of that, again, FBA is a identity, quite like other identity categories that we grab onto, that my brother Davon Love said when he was on my show last, and I appreciated what he said, because it's part of my Ngea theory as well, that we tend to form, many times we form our identities around unresolved traumas. Yeah. And even when we mean well, we don't mean, we even when we mean well, we cause harm. And it's very difficult to have conversations with people who have not resolved their traumas. Now, I know some people might say that free air is a pacifist or what have you, but I think there's something that we can learn from that dialogical process, even if it's within our own community, which we fail to be able to do. And because I say, one of my Ngea theory says, let me be wrong. Now, just because I don't see it the way you see it doesn't mean I'm a threat. But when we have unresolved trauma, things that are not a threat seem to be a threat. So,
but you know, brother, but even with this question of identity, because that's what they will say. They will say this is just a lineage. This is all this is a lineage, but it's also an ideology, and I don't want them to be able to back out of that, because they will, again, they are against Pan-Africanism, they are against Black nationalism, they are against socialism, Marxism, or any of the frameworks that we have used before to carve out a pathway to liberation. So if you are against all of these, I would assume that you are pro-colonialism, pro-assimilation. As long as you are allowed to get some of those colonial trinkets, you're fine with everything.
Yeah. So, Brother Shabazz, I appreciate that. That's absolutely true. And that's kind of how I entered this conversation, in fact. I entered this conversation because I wasn't accepting this idea that you have an identity that is not tied to some type of thought. Like, there's no reason to create the identity in the first place. There's a political reason to create a new faction, a new whatever. And then I go to their website, FBA, and I show them what Daddy puts out there. I show them what Daddy Tariq puts out there. And what Daddy Tariq puts out there is it is a nativist Black version of white nativism. It is very white. It is very KKK-like. It is very, it has everything down to the to purity tests. It says on the website that if you are, quote unquote, they're calling you a Jamaican, right? So my wife is from Jamaica, right? I'm from the United States. My ancestry comes through the United States. Hers come through Jamaica. Of course, our origin is in Africa. But because I have a son, and I'm not taking it personal because I don't really take them that serious. I do see them as a problem. But I'm saying is like they're not going to dictate how we move. So, but they say that my children can't be in leadership positions. And then they said there's no ideology behind it. They said that if you have a parent that is not FBA, quote unquote, I don't use the term, and I suggest that we don't ever use that term because we think that a term doesn't have any political, like there's a reason why they want that term to become recognized. Because once you start using the term, the ideology is not far behind. Brother Shabazz, I saw you out there for many months now, out there really arguing in many, crafty and spirited debates. Like, could you just tell me, I've seen you going at some of their necks. where are you at right now, as it pertains to FBA? What's your thoughts about it right now? Because
And
there's a lot going on right now too.
yeah, I just think they're all having the wrong conversation. It's a distraction from what's really happening, man. We are in some extremely trying times, right? I mean, we got they're up in the surveillance in black communities. These techno fascists are doing everything they can to consolidate their power and the use of technology to maintain a certain social order. I see Rakeem rest in peace. And as you know, bro, that it even starts leading into pseudo history. Now they have such a disdain for Africa that they have become pretendians, right? And denying the fact that they are even of African descent. And it's so strange. It's so strange, like to see. And I can't lie, it's very discouraging at times, which is which is why I get off of social media, because it's it seems to be a lot more prevalent. We have become, with this age of anti-intellectualism, we are, as Elijah Muhammad would say, easily led in the wrong direction, hard to be led in the right direction. And so, yeah, I see those people are as ops, to be honest with you. They are against the progress of African people. They are against the revolutionary ideologies that we have always used to, again, carve out our pathway to freedom, justice, and equality. And so they are pretty much just assimilationist, xenophobic assimilationists who have found a grift, something that they can get clout from. One thing I noticed as well, and I know that you've noticed, that there's a whole little FBA ADOS ecosystem, right? Like you have Yvette and Tone at the top, and Tariq Nasheed at the top, but then underneath you have other people who begin to get a name within these groups, and they start creating YouTube pages, and then their IG, and then their Twitter blows up, and then they become
Mhm.
somebody. These are
Right.
It's just a bunch of losers, bro, that finally has a place to congregate with each other. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? You never you never see them in public. I like to say that FBA doesn't exist without a Wi-Fi signal. There there are people putting in real work, intellectual work, boots on the ground work. They never there, right? And if they are, they're quiet as a church mouse, because they know real revolutionary organizations are not for the divisive rhetoric that's going to you know drive a wedge between the diaspora and the continent. It
Mhm.
doesn't it doesn't mean that there's not work to do
Mhm.
when it comes to our relationships. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Colonialism does a number on our brains. We know that, right? You know what I'm saying? There's some self-hate, there's some mistrust, but there's relationships that need to be mended. But it has to happen.
Mhm.
You know, when we think about white hegemony, it's not just relegated to America, right?
Right.
The European is the European wherever he's at.
Mhm.
The European, if especially in the nations that obviously he's colonized, right? Like he's the he puts himself on the top of the food chain wherever he is. And so why are we trying to delineate from our brothers and sisters when white supremacy is a global endeavor, right? You know what I'm saying? White supremacy transcends America, even though America may be the world's, you know, global, the top of the food chain right now. It doesn't mean, like, we can look at what's happening in the UK. Look at what's happening in all these other European countries. Look at what's happening. Look at what South Africans are, white Afrikaners are still doing to native South Africans. Like it's this is so why are we not looking at an international approach to an international problem, right? Why are we looking at delineating from, because when we think about it, right,
Mm-hmm.
it's like as a people, a people's army,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why are you trying to kick members out of your army just because they were born in another place? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I just feel like it's counterproductive. I feel like eventually we are going to find out that this shit is government sponsored. When we look
Mm.
at like my brother Dr. Gilmore mentioned, FBA pretty much a spinoff of ADOS. Anybody that doesn't know the history knows that Tariq Nasheed got down with the ADOS movement at one point, fell out with Yvette and Tone, then created Foundational Black Americans. So when we want to know what the root of someone's ideology is, we look to see where they got it from. When we're talking about Yvette Carnell, I mean, we all know she was in a right-wing anti-immigration think tank, right? And her the and so do you remember, like, whenever she first came out, first started becoming popular, she would say things like, we have more in common than the European than we do the African.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you remember that, right?
Yeah,
And saying,
absolutely.
who does that benefit, right? I saw somebody that said the other day that they would I couldn't believe they said it, but they said that they have they would defend the white man in America before they would defend a tether, is what they said, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so who does this benefit? It doesn't benefit us. It doesn't benefit us that want liberation for our people, right? Like, what kind, matter of fact, what type of material analysis do they have about anything? Have you seen them talk about uh counterinsurgency? Have you seen them talk about America's imperialist efforts in Iran? Have you seen them talk about Palestine? Have you seen them talk about surveillance? Have you seen them
Well,
talk
I mean, I
about
was about to say,
capitalism?
I seen Yvette Carnell talk about it. She was talking about we should nuke Iran. That the United
Yeah,
States should just nuke
I
that
remember you
country.
told me that.
I couldn't
That's a
believe it.
fact.
I
Yeah,
couldn't believe it.
I seen this. I got a screenshot of the tweet somewhere. You're right. She said it.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane.
We should nuke our we. Who is we?
Right.
You know what I'm
What did
saying?
she say? We should nuke what? Who?
Iran.
Yeah, the U.S. should nuke Iran and get it over with.
Mm.
I mean, think about this. This is the deadliest weapon to ever exist in the weapon of man, or in the history of weapons in mankind. This is the deadliest killing machine that ever existed. It's created by these white countries that have only ever deployed it against one non-white country historically.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen the absolute destruction and lawlessness of that.
Mm.
And she said they should nuke them and get it over with.
Mm.
That's the revolutionary political pundit.
So, and don't that mean that therefore ADOS politics are in line with American imperialism? As long as
Absolutely.
we can get our reparations, and they used to say this, it used to irk me so bad, man. They used to, when we get reparations, we'll be made whole, is what they would say. Right? So that means you give us our check and we're gonna be down with whatever y'all down with. No matter if it's, exploiting and stealing the resources out of Africa, whether it's, bombing East Africa, mining all of the cobalt out of Congo, sending, different militaries to Haiti. We with all of that. Just give us our check. These are Negroes that are telling you that they can be bought.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And one other thing, I know both of y'all heard this before, is, again, it's like a cult. They have talking points. They'll
Yeah.
say, hey, through, because of our ethnogenesis, we are no longer African. They, first off, they don't understand genetics. On an autosomal level, we average about 77% African genetics on an autosomal level.
Right.
They begin to bring us here, obviously 1526, but then really in 1619. Do they think that is enough time to evolve genetically into a new people? That's not how genetics works. When we think about ethnogenesis, it's not to say that, like, look at the Gullah Geechee people. It's the ethnogenesis in America, but it does not mean that they are that their Africanity is erased. That, you know what I'm saying? It just means that through the transatlantic slave trade, uh, different ethnic groups combined that were taken from West and Central Africa become one in America, right? And then they like to throw out this term flat blackness. Like and then they even begin to gatekeep who's black. I've seen some say, Jamaicans aren't black, or black people in Latin America aren't black. And they'll say these different things, and they'll say, Americans are the only black people, or don't group us in with all these other black people because that's flat blackness. That's erasure, right? And again, it's all just talking points that come from the top, they trickle down to the bottom, and then they just share them. They never have original thought or real material analysis about anything. I have yet to see it. And if they do, like Myron said, it's going to be pro some shit that they should be against. And in this case, Yvette said, hey, we should just nuke Iran. But I've also seen them say, hey, I'm okay with the National Guard coming to black communities. We got to clean them up. Or I'm okay with Haitian immigrants being deported and being killed by ICE. I'm okay with that. I've seen this type of rhetoric. You know what I'm saying? And the thing that they run from is the thing that they should be. The thing that they are running from is the thing that they need in order to snap out of that spell. In certain African cultures, to be human means to be humane, right? When have African people ever been okay with genocide, ever been okay with death and destruction of innocent people? That's not who we've ever been. Sometimes, again, we've been, even in certain cases, you might say that we've been a little too friendly at
Yeah.
times, right? But at the end of the day, that's who we are as a people. We're not for that. You know what I'm saying? Regardless to what nation a person comes from.
Yeah, I think, just to kind of deal with this term, delineate, I think it's kind of essential to talk about that a bit, because I think even in the way that they use it, it's my argument that it's already done. It's no need to delineate, because they play games with that word delineate.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they know what they mean when they say delineate, but then so what they mean is separate in totality. But then the straw man or what they'll fall back on is delineate. Everybody else has already done it. They'll say everybody else delineated. So when, what's his name, Shabazz or whatever his name is,
yeah,
Shabazz he got an award, and he thought or this person, when they got an award, they thanked Africa, they thanked the Congo, they thanked Cuba, they thanked Jamaica.
Yeah,
and so that was their form of delineation. And see, family, we don't do that, they say. And I say, well, the problem is, and I think there's something that you two spoke to, is this idea of conceptualizing where we are as an eternal colony. And I think that, again, if we don't conceptualize, I agree with what you're saying here, because if we don't conceptualize it as an eternal colony, I'm going to add it to the end of it. I think you may have said it. Everything else would only confuse us. Because I'll give you an example. I was in Jamaica. We were leaving the Airbnb that we were in, and we drove down the street, And of course, the Airbnb are people who kind of like, these are people's houses, right? So we drove down the street. There's another complex gated community. And they had a Jamaican flag up and they had a American flag next to it.
Mm.
Now, the returning Jamaicans had a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I played with them a bit just to kind of have conversation. They was like, what is going on? Why they got American flag here? And I said, hold up. I said, hold up. Now, when you go to the United States, you're going to see a Jamaican flag everywhere. Now, if I wasn't conscious enough, I would misunderstand exactly their feelings and what they felt there. And also, I have to be really honest that the reality is, like, I did kind of go back and forth with them a bit just to see where they were thinking, because it would be a double standard. And sometimes it is. And what I mean is because I think a lot of people are confused, even those people in like Jamaica and different places, our diasporic brothers and sisters, that because they don't often or always separate the African in America from America. And I'm clear that what I want to delineate from is American culture. I mean, the red, black, and the red, white, and blue. Because to my knowledge, I've never seen too many black people in America that really, really love that flag. I've never seen anybody that loves that flag. So, I mean, I've seen people now, FBA draped in it and ADOS draped in it and all these people doing it. But for the most part, we have a very unresolved type of relationship with this country that we're in. And we try to parallel ourselves and juxtapose ourselves next to our brothers and sisters who are in struggling independent countries. Flags that they chose, albeit, right? So, nonetheless, we struggle to juxtapose these things fairly, accurately, and clearly against one another. I can understand why you wouldn't want an imperialist country flag just flying around in your country in its monuments. And I don't have to take that as an insult because you brought your flag here to America. I don't know. Y'all follow what I'm saying here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the things that's again where they get it confused, because I've heard that argument a lot. And then Marn, you can go ahead and build on it. But okay, so there's a difference between waving a Haitian flag, waving a Cuban flag, and waving an American flag.
Yeah.
America, again, is a world power that only exists in the way that it exists now because of what it does to the global South when it comes to resources, labor, and its military. This is an imperialist nation. This is an empire. And look at what's going on in Iran, right? Look, from the time you were born, right? America has been in a perpetual state of war, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're never not. Oh, they're never not somewhere in the Middle East or Africa, right? And so whenever we look, and also, I mean, we can keep it simple. That's the flag we was enslaved under.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not. What am I supposed to? How am I supposed to have any? I guess love for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially as somebody who strives to honor his ancestors the best way I know how. Like, nah, it's just no go for me, man. But I do see that argument a lot. Like, Myron, what you think? You know what I'm saying? Because that's one thing that they do like to say.
Yeah, but we talk about this all the time, Rakeem. Like, again, like, I think you're seeing, look, American society is fracturing internally.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're seeing is this be reflected in the Black American psyche. We're not the first generation to struggle with the antagonism between being an American and being a Black person.
Mm-mm.
We didn't invent that,
right?
But notice how we interpret it, right, through a deficit. right? So they do it and we don't, so something's wrong with us.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
But you know, in 1972, Huey P. Newton, you know, he theorized this, and he said that this was a cultural advantage that Black America had. This was a gift because it's going to allow them to live in a technological and hyper mobile age and identify with the people of the world and help create a universal identity. Because unlike other groups, they're not connected to the soil of any nation.
Right.
They have a universal capacity for pro-social behavior. He thought this, right? But in
And look,
our generation, we take this same problem and we make it a sickness.
right.
Right? We make it a sickness, and we're looking at colonies, neo-colonies, these countries, right? Neo-colonies.
Mhm.
And we're inside of it. And we, you know, and again, like our positionality, you know, part of this theory Huey had was that based on our internal positionality within the country, we could destroy the machinery of imperialism. We could rip it down in its urban centers. We don't even talk like that anymore.
Mm-mm.
We're talking about the Image Awards.
Mm.
We're talking about the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but again, I think you're seeing this, right? American society and its imperial status is being fundamentally redefined, challenged, and discredited on a world stage. And Black America is at a point of crisis because after 2 terms with Obama and a Black president, the world didn't get better for Black America.
Absolutely not.
And nobody, and that's what the real issue is at this. When you listen to Yvette in her early days, that's what she's trying to explain. That's the basis of all of this. How do we explain the fact that all that moral capital, all that assimilation from the 60s and the grand narrative of civil rights culminated into a drone empire and the new digital economy where Black folks were stuck driving Uber with no way and couldn't afford health insurance? How do you explain that? You know?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and really getting back to this idea of delineation, just so that so I'm saying that even those of us, including those on this particular panel here, we've delineated from the country ourselves. So we have even delineated from this place called America in a way. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's the whole point of whenever we say that we are an internal colony,
Right.
essentially a nation within a nation. Like if I read a quote from Delaney, he said, "We are a nation within a nation, as the Poles in Russia, as the Hungarians in Austria, the Welsh, the Irish, and the Scotch in the British dominions." And I'll go also. This is Du Bois. He said there are manifestly groups of people, countries, and nations which, while not colonies in the strict sense of the word, yet so approach the colonial status as to merit the designation semi-colonial. The classic example of this status has long been China. There are other groups like the Negroes of the United States who do not form a separate nation and yet who resemble in their economic and political condition distinctly colonial status. And then there were 12 things that he said that you could point to as far as us being a colonized people. 1, physical and or psychological violence, economic exploitation, poverty, illiteracy, lawlessness, starvation, death, disaster, disease, disenfranchisement, the denial of cultural equality, and the denial of participation in political processes. If that doesn't still reign true today, I don't know what does.
Really true, right? And as I was reviewing Wretched of the Earth, and they spoke about the white, like being in these different countries. Of course, wasn't talking about the United States specifically then, but speaking about how you have white communities that have stone houses with steel, with architecture and trash bins that have all the trash in the trash bins and you know, I'm just going to add on to what it looks like to me today, coffee shops and manicured lawns and all these different things that make to cloak the disgustingness of this imperial nation and any nation like that. But then he talks about the shanty towns and these very transient places and spaces. And you can see that today in Baltimore. You can see that today in the United States. I absolutely saw it in Jamaica the other day, where the minority still control shanty towns. Even the other day they were talking, I'm not sure if y'all saw it the other day. And this is going to feed, right? This is going to actually speak to much of the work that our dear brother does here, Dr. Gilmore and Dr. Tommy Carey, and what they speak about. Now I cannot say that I reference, I mean, that I've actually fact checked this, but when I was in Jamaica, my brother-in-law, and who's from Jamaica, and my mother and my wife's aunt and my sister-in-law, they and us, we were talking about this forgot what they call it, y'all, when you take the land and you basically build up like dwellings and things of that nature. It was taken back from some brothers and sisters in Jamaica. They actually kind of like took bulldozers and put them out of the community. Now they do this in America in house encampments, but in Jamaica they build up the temporary dwellings and things of that nature. But some of them had built up more permanent dwellings. But nonetheless, they came in and they bulldozed the community. But what did they say? What did they tell me? What did they do? They locked up some people. Who did they lock up? They locked up the brothers, the young men, and the older men, and they locked them up for a very specific reason. This is my family members telling me this, and they're not like thinking like how I'm thinking. But when I heard it, I said, man, that is exactly what Dr. Carey talks about in The Man Not, and what he talks about, and I'm assuming that Dr. Clay Gilmore speaks about, like this because I've heard you talk a bit too. But they locked up all the brothers because they didn't want war to break out. But again, I want to go back, and I'm gonna come back. I just want to show you that connection there. Now I wasn't able to verify it, but they just told me this, and that's what happened, right? But to delineate from, it's a lie when they say that we have not delineated. When they say delineate, they say that we have to have something that distinguishes us from other people that look like us. They say that Pan-Africanism, it lumps us all together and shows none of our texture. It doesn't show us our differences. It doesn't show us, all this type of thing. And they said the word African American doesn't distinguish us from them. Whereas that is false. That is false. That is absolutely a lie. That's why I don't play the game. Because when people speak about African Americans, they know who they're talking about. They even say African American. People know it. And some people can say, well, they can, let's say, begin to identify as African American, especially third generation. But the first two generations don't even want to utilize that term for the most part. But those who do often say they're doing it as a form of solidarity. And they don't, and that's what the research shows, that people from other spaces that say that they're African American or even Black American, they're doing it as a form of solidarity, which is different than the way that FBA and their leader and their ideology espouses or reports. You look like you got something, brother.
No, I was just saying, like, it's very interesting, right? Because Look at the names we gave our institutions when we first got here, from the African Methodist Episcopal Church to African Lodge, which became the Prince Hall, Prince Hall
Right.
Masons, like Africa Town, Alabama, right? Like we always knew who we are, and the idea, and so this whole idea of African American and how that again, this whole push to I guess remove the African from the American, right? Because if you notice, they don't even use the term no anymore. They say Black American, and they purposely say Black American because they don't want
Absolutely.
anything to do with Africa, right? I don't
Absolutely.
ever use the term Black American for that reason, right? Because
Absolutely.
if you're not gonna call me a new African, I'm an African American, but heavy on the African, right? And so, but again, the African, not even just culturally, because as we know, a lot of our cultural continuity had to go underground here in America just due to the nature of how slavery was. But I'd implore these people to study genetics. We walking around here with West African haplogroups. We walking around with, I know brothers as probably that, 97% uh, African autosomally, West African. And so like, this is who you are, regardless to whom or what. You know what I'm saying? And also, because when they talk about ethnogenesis, they often bring up culture. But also, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and maybe you can chime in, Myron. But when we talk about culture in a settler colonial project, right? There's not a culture that is native to this place outside the cultures of indigenous people. The culture that we express as African Americans is rooted in Africa. It just
Hmm.
is what it is.
Hmm.
From the music,
Hmm.
the drumming and the polyrhythms, the
Hmm.
foods, right?
Hmm.
Uh don't know yams grow here, but why matter of fact, why do we even call sweet potato yams, right? Because it's not the same thing, but that's what we call it, right? Okra,
Hmm.
right? Watermelon, right? These are things that when you see like what jambalaya and gumbo, right? And these are obviously cuisines, African American cuisines that are rooted in African cuisines, in our African ways of knowing, right? And so we can go on like whether it's music and language, you know, you're not. But even then, right? With that said, culturally, I would. I know some people may disagree, but culturally, we are African people. Genetically, we are African people. And what is culture? How does culture manifest itself in a settler colonial nation, right? Like, what is American culture? Did the British that came over here, did they create American culture? Was that an extension of British culture? Like, what are they considering American culture? And if I had to pinpoint anything, I guess I would say violence, subjugation, baseball, and apple pie.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I mean, I just think you pushing up against decades of American sociological thought that really idealized slavery as something that wiped the African memory away. And this has been empirically proven not be true. I mean, you mentioned Du Bois earlier, but I mean, his entire career was around tracking the Africanity, the extended Africanity of the Black American population. And what he showed, I mean, is going back to what we call the Black church and basic
Mm.
funeral ceremonies,
Hmm.
basic conceptions of death, music, food. I mean, it's no question. This idea that slavery just completely wiped the Africanity away. I mean, but you see Black Power theorists having this debate in the 60s. There was always this idea that white culture developed and civilized the African savage in America. You
Right.
know, you're just seeing this be internalized a little
Right.
bit in this particular historical moment we in. And I think you're seeing the denial of that. You know, you're seeing the denial of that. But I mean, Du Bois, I mean, he has a whole book, The Gifts of the Negro. I mean, he in 1897 saying the destiny of the black race in America is not to imitate any other group. So, like, you know, like you were saying, like there's been delineation. You know, you can read Martin Delaney's first novel from like the 1840s. He says African American. Okay, he's a black nationalist.
Right. Right.
So I mean, so why, you know, we reinvent the wheel a lot. You know, like there's a deep historical illiteracy, and we confront the same contradictions of every generation before us, but act like we somehow, you know, like rediscovered it or something.
Exactly. And you mentioned the internalizing the idea that Europeans civilized the savage when it came to us, right? I've seen FBA, I promise you, in order to diss Africans, they will post like memes that you would find in 4chan or something of, you know, Africans eating bush meat, right? And saying, look how uncivilized they are, right? You would think it was coming from a white man. But again, that's why I wanted to bring that up, because that's what you just mentioned. And they have internalized this idea that it was European culture that civilized us, right? You know, and I didn't, and you know, it's very I don't know, it's very telling. I think it also comes through in their ideology and their politics as well.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I'm going to kind of see if we can kind of transition into some other aspects of the conversation. But one of the things that I've heard you two speak to, especially Brother Shabazz, you starting off, you spoke to this idea of war, right? And even us being within the bounds of an internal colony. There was a fallacious critique of me recently by someone who just made up all types of lies, didn't do their research, just because I had I would call a friendly academic, and I'm saying friendly because I could come very strong.
Yeah.
But I have enough information to come strong on in my critique. But my point is not to cause harm. It's about us actually liberating ourselves, us healing, and all that type of thing, right? But they came back at this. Well, a brother came in and he said that, and he said, he called me Crinkler. He said Crinkler. He said Crinkler. You know, he made up all types of lies. He says Crinkler believe we had war. He said Crinkler believes that we had war, and he be having these other people on his show that believe that we at war. So I responded to say, so like, you started off saying that if we don't know we're an internalized colony, then I think everything else I'm just putting the nearly full ending on there. It would just confuse us, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, and I realized that some people in our spaces, in these black spaces even, are saying that they don't believe that we're at war.
Right.
I mean, I know we can play and say, well, we're not at war and all that, but I'm saying, but literally, they don't believe that. They believe that our way of whatever they want to call it, I can't call it liberation, I can't call it freedom, I can't call it African sovereignty, I can't call it anything for these people, because they believe that if you just go and get a STEM degree, that somehow you're going to free yourself. Not with the things you're going to build with the STEM degree, but getting the STEM degree and getting a job is liberation. Well, I can't even call it liberation, but that's enough. What do you say to that? And I'm saying that because And why am I tying it back here? I'm tying it something. It's just a note that I had early on. What do you think that there's a war going? Because I really okay. This is why I'm tying it back. Because I believe he really at well, that's what it was. He really think we at war. And I do know we are, from my standpoint, we are, and I think you said something very similar. For me, I do see the war for the hearts and minds of our people. I think you said something very similar. What do y'all say about that?
Mhm. Well, absolutely, and I'm gonna pass it off to Myron in just a second, but I want y'all to read Dr. Myron Clay Gilmore's work, right? And you'll understand more about war, right? And these are a lot of the conversations that we are having on algorithms of empire as well. And we are absolutely in a war. They just don't understand the nature of war. They see warfare as just body for body, but irregular warfare, right? And as you mentioned, the battle for the hearts and minds of the people. When we talk about counterinsurgency and irregular warfare, that's the main battlefield, the hearts and minds of the people. You, it is to, it is designed to take the revolution, well, to dissuade the women and children and some men, but dissuade them and separate them from the revolutionary element within that target population. We did a show on we did a show with Sarah Shoker on algorithms of empire, and we talked about some of the things, the idea of a military age male, drone strikes and counterinsurgency warfare in the Middle East. Well, some of these same tactics are being used domestically, right? When we look at the technology that's being used, I know today I saw a report that was talking about how flock cameras are, most of the flock cameras are generated in the Black Belt South, right? Me and Dr. Clay Gilmore did a show on algorithms of empire where we talked about it was a scholar. We talked about how in Canada there's these immigration kiosks that give false positives to black women at about 37%. We done shows about predictive policing, right? And how these how this affects and targets black communities. We saw the National Guard being brought out to the black communities a few months ago, right? We see we see all of these things that are targeting the black community. And so absolutely I would say we're in a war. We are in you know, a regular warfare but even then there are instances where it's body for body. They are the state actors are killing us. You know what I'm saying? It's not just,
Absolutely.
it's, and so um I don't think that we will be able to capitalism and good job our way out of this oppression, right? When we look at how many under Trump, 800,000 black men and women have lost their job, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
almost a million people. Yeah.
almost a million people.
Hmm.
So that's why having a revolutionary analysis is important. That's why reading uh, the theories and the scholars and the experiences of the revolutionaries that came before us is important, because none of them, absolutely none of them, taught that capitalism would be our saving grace. Not even Dr. King, right? And so don't get me wrong. I understand within a system of capitalism that we need food, clothing, and shelter. We're
Mm-hmm.
gonna have to work. We're gonna, until until something pops off. It is what it is, right? But at the end of the day, it's not a means to liberation. It's a mean, like, again, this is part of the assimilation and pacification that me and Myron are talking about. The idea that, okay, I can get me a good job and now I'm immune to what's happening in the inner city. I'm immune to what's happening in the ghetto, the killing field. I don't see myself as a part of an internal colony. I see myself as a black person in America that's climbing the ladder, right? Like, and so this is what I mean, and this is what we mean as part of winning the hearts and minds of the people. That's where a lot of this battlefield, this counterinsurgent battlefield, takes place. Like, we read Galula, who wrote one of the manuals on counterinsurgency, and that's what he explicitly says, that this war is an irregular war that is designed to win the hearts and minds of the target population. And correct me if I'm wrong, Myron, they even said, due to the fact that it wasn't body for body, that it was feminine.
That's right.
You
That's
know,
right. Yeah.
so
I think,
yeah,
you know, man. Yeah, man. Like, look, I think, you know, I like how you introduced it when you say, like, some people were saying, like, you know, you think you at war, right? Because, you know, me and Rakeem laugh about this all the time. But if you listen to, you know, the Black podcast space, or, you know, a Black PhD on YouTube, you would think everybody studied counterinsurgency. It's just what everybody know and all of that, right? But, you know, I wrote my dissertation on counterinsurgency in 2023. And when I was doing research in 2021 and 2022, it was very difficult for me to find sources from American US-based scholars on this topic. What I did find, it never applied this framework within the country. Ever. I mean, I found one excellent book by a West Point professor. He told you about counterinsurgency in 500 pages from here to Antarctica. Never about what happened to Black people in America. Right? So this is not a common idea at all. It's not. You know, it's not a common idea. And I think the problem is, like Rakeem was getting to, you know, when you look in the history of this stuff, I try to, like, just put it simple sometimes. But look, man, you know, going back to slavery, white people invented new ideas and definitions, military doctrines and concepts to kill Black people. And they distinguished that from how they killed other white people, even enemy armies. So one was civilized, or what we now call conventional warfare. The other was savage warfare, or what we now call counterinsurgency warfare. Okay, and the savage had, you know, particular qualities and characteristics. When you look through anthropological journals of the 1830s to about the 1890s or so, what you will find when they're talking about savages, they're talking about African men, non-white men who are short, who, this is what they say, unattractive, brutal toward women. This is one of the key markers. Savage societies have men who harm women, right? So the goal of counterinsurgency is rebranded. Conquest is rebranded, not as extermination, but assimilation, right? If I want an empire, that means I need citizens who pay taxes. That means when I invade, I cannot kill everybody. That means some people who resist are going to have to die, and other people will be assimilated into the labor market, into the educational sector, and into whatever we need them to do, right? And that's when you know you've won. So that distinguishes it from European history, what you call the decisive battle paradigm that you get from Napoleon, right? Two white armies meet up in the capital, they fight body for body, whoever wins take the capital. Well, when the white army goes to Africa, they can't fight like that. People are willing to throw stuff and move. They don't build large buildings and stay sedentary like that. So you can't occupy that space and say you won. You have to come up with a new way. So counterinsurgency comes from that, right? And it comes from slavery. I mean, if you're talking about North America, I mean, slavery was war of the races. Thomas Jefferson understood this. Thomas Jefferson canonized the idea that the master and slave was at war in his Notes of Virginia. The person who authored the Constitution of the United States canonized an American philosophical thought that master and slave were at war 200 years ago. But this is a new idea to most U.S. academic activist circles. We don't think like this.
And also, like Myron mentioned, a lot of times we see counterinsurgency mischaracterized um, as a literary device or all kind of different things, when in actuality it is an internal conflict that where one group is trying to maintain power and another is trying to take power. And it can look, again, like we mentioned, it was seen as feminine because to the naked eye, the things that the social reforms that they can give the target group to incentivize assimilation actually looks like you're gaining something. It looks like I just okay, I got that job then, you know what I'm saying? Um and look, we got this. So not only are you hearts like we talk about this all the time, Myron, like counterinsurgency is designed to kill your imagination.
Mm.
I mean, look. The French
Mhm,
generals literally said this,
mhm,
right? They said, look, the first step of this stuff is the physical conquering of the land. The second step is to shape the ideas of the people.
mhm,
There,
Mm-hmm.
there's a Russian general. He said you got to grab the enemy by the throat and seize them by their imagination. That's how you
mhm,
win counterinsurgency, not just by killing.
mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, too much killing might be might mess up their cause, right? Because if I'm trying to, I mean, obviously they're going to kill when need to be, but if they just went in there and slaughtered everybody, then that would actually be more in favor of the insurgent group, the revolutionary group, because here I can point like, look, they're killing men, women, and children, regardless to whom or what. This is what this is because look, it's based around a cause, right? And so for someone to say we are not at war, I would definitely say that they just need to study what war looks like.
Right.
Um,
But see, look, like what you said right there was important, right? And this, like, you can see this in our interview with Sarah Shoker. But like, this is the importance of this intervention with counterinsurgency and is basis in Black male studies. And I think this is another factor in how the idea is received and also how it's perceived by people. But one of the basic ideas of Black male studies is an idea called phallicism.
mhm,
And Tommy Curry theorized phallicism to explain contradictory kinds of fetishizations and caricatures of Black men. So, on the one hand, going back to slavery, Black men are characterized to be violators of women, but we can see with the evidence that they're sexually violated by their masters, men and women, right? From then up to today. So they're projected to be the sexual threat, then sexually violated. They're projected to be the monster, but then they're the ones lynched and castrated, right?
mm.
So that dynamic of phallicism, when that's done, when that death is imposed, that's done in the name of progress, society, and the protection of women. That's not a lawless killing, right? So if you lock up criminals, right, you can get people to agree and say, hey, criminals ought to be arrested. If Black
Mhm.
men violate women, people who violate women ought to be arrested. You can rebrand that extermination campaign as something in defense of progress,
We can
right?
see
And you
that
see
with
this happen.
we can see that
Yeah,
with them justifying the genocide in Palestine, right?
right,
The men were savages. The men were R-wording children and women, when in actuality it was the other way around.
right. It's the other way
Um,
around, right?
Let me
But
do this,
again, right,
brother.
this regime
mhm,
is democratic, you know.
mhm.
Let me do this because y'all making the necessary switch, but I want to bring us into it. I want to cap off that last section as far as FBA. If there's anything that you all ADOS, any war around that, as far as FBA, ADOS, any of that, you can make your final statements if you have anything.
No,
If
I'm
not,
good.
we can just I'm gonna transition um into the section about gender wars and the attack on Black male studies. Some things I just kind of want to know is one. I just want to put a period here. That delineation and ethnogenesis is already completed. It's done at this point where we are. It's done even if you accept the word African American. I mean, you call yourself foundational Black American, so I mean, it is what it is. But it has already occurred. The people, a part of ethnogenesis as a social construct, is that we accept it. You are, what they're trying to do is to create something else and exclude the Africanness of it. So I appreciate the discussion. We didn't get into all the pretending stuff, but we're going to keep these conversations coming, hopefully, and that type of thing. And I want to, I'm hearing you to kind of switch over to this gear on the male Black studies, this attack. And I put attack on there. And I have a variety of thoughts around this part of the conversation. And I might be a little bit more active here, maybe just a little. But some time ago, not that long ago, and let me just say this. Part of my reason for creating this podcast, whatever you want to call it, is that I want to really deal with this thing around identity. And I understand that people think, and we think, that these are harmless identities. Some people really believe that, and we fight for them. And we fight for them so much that someone told me that my talking points may have sounded a little conservative, for the mere fact that I just don't agree with all of what people are saying. I think we need to look at identity a little bit more deeper, because identity has been played on us. I've seen it as a psychotherapist. I see how it plays on our minds, anecdotally, clinically, and through research. I'm going to say all of that, because, and what I mean by clinically is that what the research says, I also experience. I've seen it institutionally. In academia, I see how the mythology is pervasive, but I also see how it creates a certain hyper-aroused state within our communities. And it's not to say that things aren't happening, but I argue that the things aren't happening to the degree that we are led to believe they're happening. Now, I can say 1 time or 2 times or 100 times a year is too much, but I want you to understand that it's also important that we understand that it's not happening the way we think it is. Because trauma has you believing things are more threatening than it truly is. When you think things are just busting at the seams and it's not, you're going to have us fighting in these gender wars. I'm sorry. When a few months ago, after the Fairfax situation, now me as a psychotherapist, and people might not understand it because I have to deal with this on an individual level, in a familial level, is that when you have false information leading you, you will respond inaccurately. You will respond aggressively. You will respond in ways that aren't helpful to yourself, your family, your community, or what have you. So it was this big thing around femicide. And as an academic, as a psychotherapist, as one who administers psychometrics, it's essential that we measure what we're calling a thing. And we have to identify what we're saying. And so there was a big fuss when there was a clip that went around. It was a brief clip where one of my brothers and their comrades were speaking about this. It was a minute clip. And the individual basically said that femicide is the murder of women. And I said, wow. I said we have. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was more like we have to be able to define things more clearly than that, because then everything becomes femicide. And when everything becomes femicide, and black men are dangerous, when black men are not dangerous like they're being purported to be. I'm not saying black men aren't doing a thing. I don't care how balanced I try to be with this conversation. That yes, black men do this. Yes, they have. Black men, they have done it. We got to do better. But this and this and this is not it. So we, there's no, okay, let me not even go that far. But just what I'm saying, a big argument came about that. And I'm telling you, the fear that I have, typically when I'm in conversation with people around these identity politics, is the very thing that I'm arguing about. It happens in the very conversation when people get triggered and misunderstand what I'm saying because they believe the mythology. I'm saying I talk to my students, and I just want to be really clear. I'm saying that I love black people, all black people, all of them, my men, my women, my children. Whatever, if you're trans, gay, lesbian, whatever, if you're same gender loving, I love us all. Let me be real clear. But when you start making up statistics that aren't true, I think we need to talk about them. And I think that we have to move past the state where we say it's not a proper time to talk about a thing. Because when you're feeding the fire with lies and faulty statistics and information from, I don't care, or let me say, I care. But when you're saying you're not studying feminism, or you have this radical feminism, or this other type of feminism, or that type of feminism, or this and that, and I hear the liberal talking points that's coming out of it, I hear the intersectionality that's coming out of it. When I'm telling you, I teach multiculturalism. I see how it has the minds of our young people. I've been trained. I tell people all the time, I'm a trained feminist. I know what feminism sounds like. I'm a therapist, trained in counseling. I got a lot of training in being a white woman. Let me say that again. I got a lot of training in being a white woman. Hey, brother, I don't hear you. You talking to me?
Hey, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so brothers, let's talk about it.
Man, look, I think, this femicide thing, I think you're dealing with one of the most dangerous forms of propaganda today, man. I really do. I really do. And, in my dissertation, I dedicated a chapter to this because I've seen this function in the literature. From my discipline in philosophy, what I've seen is femicide be articulated as the black femicide, as the killing of black women because they're women. And this is not an inscrutable mystery, and it's not a theoretical question. We can go to the empirical data about this. When they go to these statistics, challenge these people. Are they looking at meta-analyses of male and female victims? Because what these feminist types of talking points do, they point out the disparity between black women and white women in multiples, and they leave it there. Right? But what they don't give you a comprehensive view of the actual rates of perpetration of intimate partner homicide. So the most recent meta-analysis, it includes like almost all 50 states. I think it's 2 didn't report for these years. They got a huge sample, over 15,000 murders from 2003 to 2015. Intimate partner homicide, all races in America measured. And I've asked students this. Last term, I asked students this. I said, out of 48 million black people, what's the number you would guess in a 12-year span, black women die from black men in their relationships? And I heard estimates up to 10 to 20,000 people, 10 to 20,000 a year. And the actual number is 100 or so. right? So it's not that it's not happening, like you said. It's nowhere near the magnitude that we talk about this kind of issue. And it's funny because when you read public health scientists, white people, when they study these things and they look at the comprehensive data analysis that you have available in the CDC databases, what they find is that black men have a higher likelihood of dying from their female partner than some groups of women have from dying from men. Right. So this is not domestic violence is not monocausally linked with masculinity. That's false. But like you said, we all know the Duluth theory. We all
Yeah.
know when you a man, you beat women, right? We know the same old 80s feel. But I think the sad part is that the standards of scholarship are so low, right? That ideas that white people created, tested, and threw out 30 years ago, we still debating about in the black sector. Right? Black people still debating about this stuff when the people who come up with it don't even follow this anymore because it doesn't track with the evidence.
Brother, I again am saying that I'm a highly trained feminist. I conducted IPV groups, intimate partner violence. I understand the will of abuse, the house of abuse, the Duluth model. I understand all the rooms, but I also use that model to say, okay, if who's being abusive, let's look at this, because when you look at all those rooms or all those spokes, everybody have to come clean now. Now, who's using the children? I'm saying on both sides. Who's using religion? Both sides. Who like what I'm saying is abuse, as we know it, if we want to keep it clean from the Duluth model and all the other models that we utilize in these feminist frameworks, intersectional frameworks, is that I forgot what I was about to say, but nonetheless, I was called out because I spoke about the bidirectionality. And it's saying that you should never mention the bidirectionality of what's going on. Never. Why? The same way I said that in our communities, look, for me, I'm coming from a healing standpoint. I don't care if it's colorism. I don't care if it's feminism. And I do have I'll be real honest with y'all up front. I do have some concerns about some of the internet versions of what I'm seeing in what they're calling black male studies. I'm not saying completely, but there are some it gets a little murky at times. And what I mean is, see, I come now, and it could be my lens. I come from a family first perspective, a community first perspective, a race first perspective. But when I see us now, I would never get on here, although they would say I'm doing it. I would never get on here and just start pointing out what sisters are doing. Or this sisters are doing that, and sisters are doing this, and sisters are doing that, and sisters are doing it, because I think that becomes finger pointing. And then we ignore, my whole premise is we ignore the structure. We ignore the imperialist system. We ignore the racism. We ignore classism. We ignore all the things. And then we skip over. I always say, before I even study anything else, I started looking for information. That when I teach multiculturalism, they say hi to race, they skip over class, and then they go into gender and sexuality. And that is always consistent, whether I'm in black schools or white schools. That is a very safe place, but it does nothing to really deal with structures in a real way. But
yeah, I mean, look, I don't think you're wrong about that. And I think, look, the problem with these debates in the attacks on black male studies is that everybody who has a disagreement with feminist ideas becomes a heretic, denounced as a right-wing ideologue, called an incel,
a manosphere guy.
Yeah, I mean, this is what happens, right? So when you challenge these kinds of dominant academic ideas in blackface, caricatures, in guys, this theory, you are seen as a demonic individual. Your career is put on the line. People don't want to talk to you. Your colleagues are alienated from you simply because you insist on looking at the evidence and not going with the commonplace characterization of black men as basically brutes toward women. And again, I think we need to just be honest about what this analysis is for,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we're not inventing the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's discovering that black men brutalize women. So now what? Right? I think it's
I guess I
information.
would
Yeah.
I
Go
would
ahead,
ask
Rakim. Yeah.
also, if it has this much revolutionary potential, why is it being funded by white, a lot of these departments being funded by white philanthropist groups, right? Like, um and also, whenever I see some of the debates between black male studies scholars and others, I'm really struck by the idea that you can critique a framework without reading the work. I don't really understand how someone does that, right? And so I just see it. I see a lot of arguing in bad faith, right? At the end of the day, show and prove. If you see something that you see or you feel is incorrect, show and prove, but you don't have to mischaracterize it as something that it's not, right? And um, at the end of the day, this idea of a black male savage, a black male sexual deviant, right? Again, we start talking about counterinsurgency. Who does that benefit, right? It benefits the state. It don't benefit our community. You know what I'm saying? Again, um, I was telling Myron, and it's there was that show Jack Ryan, I believe, where in the show in season one, the it begins, I guess, I believe in Lebanon, I believe it was, and it was a Lebanese child and his friend or his brother. They were in a village, um, and his village got bombed by the United States government, right? And it fast forwards to him as an adult. He becomes a revolutionary. He wants revenge on the West for what happened. And in the show, it begins to characterize him as a lunatic, right? The justice that he wants for what happened to his nation and to his people is unwarranted. His wife in the show begins to look at him like a lunatic as well. And at the end of the day, America swoops in, offers to uh, save the wife and children, give them a better life in America, and kill all the revolutionary men in that village. And so when we look at black men in America, right? Um, wouldn't it be advantageous to the system to, instead of building up a revolutionary consciousness, the revolutionary consciousness that once existed, like in the 60s with the Panthers, who ironically are called misogynists now, and they the Panthers were destroyed because of their internal conflicts and how they treated women, right? Isn't that a better narrative for the state, more advantageous for the state to promote that than an idea of a revolutionary man, you know, uh, uh, someone who has political education, someone who stands up for his community, right? But at the end of the day, perception means a lot. You know what I'm saying?
I
Whenever,
mean, and not only that narrative, Rakim, you got black scholars who are publishing work calling for new laws to stop black femicide. If you're a lawmaker in an imperialist system, what better to have than the Black PhD's paper here that says Black women it's a Black woman murdered every 19 hours.
Mm-hmm.
She said we need more police training so the police know to go in the house and get the man instead of being racist and messing with the woman too. I'm not being hyperbolic. You can look this stuff up. These are arguments. We need more state development of the Black community. We don't need liberation. You know, we don't need more
police
job
presence,
programs. Huh? Right. We need better trained police and development of the criminal justice system. You know, Black scholars are doing this now. So you got these broader cultural narratives, but I mean, who's reading, you know, a lot of this Black scholarship? Policymakers, major corporations, right? You know, so this is where we are.
And it's horrible because I'm going to give you a case in point that I showed a video to my class. I showed them to my classes. I've always shown like alternative gender models or something like that, genre even, right? So I've always showed Dr. Carey, I show Dr. Cleo Hudson Weems, Nah Dove, and I show Dr. Cleo Monago. And one of the things that Dr. Cleo Monago speaks about, because he speaks in ways that people don't imagine that he'll speak. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with Dr. Cleo Monago, but he was on my show about 2 weeks ago before I left out of the country. But one thing he would do, and this is a different identity, so I'm not going to go too far into it, but I'm just going to use it as an example, that certain groups of people, whether it be any of these liberal frameworks, I'll just keep it blank so I won't have any wars right now. Liberal frameworks find it very difficult to realize that Black men are being killed disproportionately. And so one of the things I'll just say it, because Dr. Cleo Monago was speaking about this event that he went to. He was speaking at an Ivy League college in New York State. And basically, he said somebody came in with rainbow earrings, and he critiques white LGBTQ or liberal frameworks. He critiques it, and he has his own African Black Senate way to and identifying his he calls it same gender love and SGLBT. But nonetheless, he said he typically speaks from a Black first perspective, and then by the end of the event, I'm telling you, this happens all the time. It happens all the time. I'm talking about, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. He says that you forgot somebody. That's what they told him. You forgot somebody. And he said, no, I didn't. And the thing, he says, no, I didn't. I spoke about, he said, who did I forget? He said he already knew what they were going to say. And then she said, well, trans people are killed so many times every day, disproportionately more than anybody. And now he's an advocate for human life, human rights, and everything. But he said he pulled out his statistics and showed them that Black men are the ones who, if he wanted to separate and talk about one specific group, in that way, it would probably be Black men when we're talking about being murdered, especially by police officers and all these other people. But again, so I showed this, my students watched this, and other people, they're like, no, he's being disingenuous because he's looking at it. He's not looking at it per capita and so on, so forth and so on. But it doesn't matter, per capita or not, Black men are disproportionately murdered at higher rates than all other groups. And I'm not saying that to say, oh, this is a badge of honor. I'm just saying this to say that the mythology is so strong, even PhD students that I teach who learn all things about statistics, they go through qualitative, quantitative, and all these different statistical courses to get their master's and then their PhD, are still falling to the mythology. And people want to know why I say we need to really deal with these identity issues that we have in our communities, because even though you'll read the statistics or you're not reading the statistics, the mythology rules the classroom. And if your professor brings something to you that is more accurate, it gives you a certain level of distance that you don't even want to see it. And getting back to the point, part of my issue here is that I've heard of our revolutionary and greatest thinkers, I would say, always speak about how the politics of the enemy will have us infighting. And I struggle with the idea that people who are calling themselves Pan-Africanists, leftists, materialists, whatever, cannot see that these identity politics are more liberal than their lefting is in there, but they're struggling to see that what their scholars and revolutionaries taught about is the very thing that's causing division and having the people fight one another. All of them spoke about it. All of our greatest spoke about how we will be fighting one another. And we can't see how these identities are serving in that way. And yeah, there's some things going on. There are things going on. Like my brother, like we have 3 different complexions right here. We can sit back here and argue about look, I think I'm a little darker than you, Shabazz. And I think I'm lighter than you. Long. Yeah, I think I'm a little lighter than you, Dr. Gilmore. And then we can sit here and argue about who's privileged. And even if there is some privilege here, but ignore the very fact that ain't structural. That is, even if it is true that I got my job or what have you, or I got a benefit or seemingly benefit, is not benefiting us all. And what hurts me hurts my brother. What hurts me hurts my sisters. So it is something that you cannot social scientifically even measure in a real way, unless you really come up with the variables that you're trying to measure. But go ahead, brothers.
I mean, look, I just want to say, man, look, what you're dealing with is female separatism. This is what Black feminism is. I mean, I just sat in and I deal with this all the time. Like, Rakeem was with me in North Carolina Central one time, and I mean, we dealt with the same thing. I sat and explained to people how, from COINTELPRO to the global mass incarceration system, I broke down the numbers of Black men to women and how men are targeted first. They told me I was minimizing women by bringing that up. Just by bringing that up. But I mean, actually, my institute, one of my research fellows, just did an analysis of the largest collection of police murders in the country in raw numbers. This is what they found from 2013 to 2026. It was about 3,900 Black men killed. That number is 3 times the women of all races combined. Think about that. Black men, 3,900. Women of all races in the same time period, 1,300 killed by the police. Just think about this and how numb we are to these dynamics. And I mean, as a person interested in counterinsurgency and how a state can map the ideas of a population, I think it is imperative on us to reflect on how numb we are as a Black population to the selective murder of military-age men and their removal from our society, whether it's through prison, through the military, or murder. Police murder in front of. We're numb to this. These are the real numbers. This is what actually happened. We don't feel that at all. We say, that don't matter as much. Matter of fact, the people who not even dead, they're more oppressed. We start keeping tallies, like you said, light skin, dark skin.
Didn't someone tell you? Didn't somebody tell you that was Black male privilege? That we are targets for death.
This is what I mean. This is an academic theory. In the academic literature on intersectionality, the debate has moved from an acknowledgement that this happens to a reinterpretation of those statistics as male patriarchal privilege. Now
we are killed first.
Right. You tell me in what world is being targeted for forcible death a privilege?
Yeah, that's crazy.
But this is the logic, right? Because if that number was about Black trans people, you would never tell me it was a privilege. If that number was about Black queer people, you would say that's evidence of oppression. But because it's not the right subject, now it's privilege. Now we can just reinterpret it.
See,
And I
that's
think
why
what you're dealing with is genocidal logic. Like, we rationalize the genocide. We're dealing with female separatism in the academy. And I mean, this is a scholarly analysis. I just seen a talk up at Halifax of a scholar at Michigan State University. She went through archives of female lesbian separatists in Canada, and she did a comparative analysis of the Combahee River Collective in the United States. One of the hallmarks of Black feminists. She said they were basically identical. So I think that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with lesbian, like Black separatism that takes these caricatures and launders it as academic and intellectual. But what we're really doing is rationalizing the government selectively targeting and removing men from the Black population, and it's called, and the consequences of this dysfunction. We're talking about gender and personal performance instead.
As far as pushback, Myron, as a Black male scholar, why is there pushback in pointing this out as saying, hey, look at who is the first targets for death. Look at how America targets Black men.
Right.
What is the problem in pointing that out? It's not like, because when we look at our revolutionary history of a people in this country, it's not as if there was this thing. I mean, look at the Panthers, for instance. Look at how many of the women in the Panthers held leadership positions, right? Like, it was never a thing where we saw just ourselves as the revolutionaries. So pointing this out, how that's not that doesn't hurt women, right? To point this out when we see ourselves as a collective. When we see ourselves, so why does one get pushback?
Because, bro, like, this is what I'm saying, brother. Like, in the academy, the dominant trend is to look at Black masculinity through a lens of criminality and its ability to harm others. Right? So your propensity to harm your children, to engage in negative sexist thinking, or harm those around you. That's the calculus all of this moves from. And if you reject that starting point, you're the heretic. Now, just like this police data, notice where my start is. It's not a theory. It's the data. That's the fundamental difference. Right? That's what you see. That's the incongruity with Black male studies and dominant approaches to understanding Black masculinity. Everybody else starts from an ism. Here's what I'm gonna tell you. What is the actual verifiable population level based data on domestic violence? We can analyze that and go from there. We don't have to start from my metaphysical definition. Right? We don't start from my metaphysical definition of police violence. What are the numbers, raw data, per capita, and we can go from there.
Right.
But that inspires hatred. You are a villain for questioning these things.
But didn't you say that even still, even whenever looking at the data, that there has been a lot of pushback in using data to explain this, right? They see that as, so it's like, if you're not using the
scientism. They say this is being white. I've had Black PhDs tell me we don't even need to worry about logical fallacies or verifiable information because that's Eurocentric. So now the white man created all science and knowledge, and you don't got to verify nothing because that's the Black thing to do, to just make shit up.
Right.
Yeah, that's why in my Ngea theory, I say it's a both and I argue that a lot of us who say we're utilizing African or Pan-African or whatever type of frameworks truly aren't. Because one of the things is like, even if you want to go metaphysical and talk about or spiritual or what have you, you want to talk about Ma'at. To me, to exclude the quantitative is not in accord with Ma'at. It's not in accord with balance. It's not the both and. It's not a problem. See, the problem is why I'm saying is now my response to that good question is that we have unresolved trauma. So the fact is, people who haven't dealt with their traumas and who have built their identities around these traumas refuse to see anything that they see as threatening, and you take it away from them as not being real, because you're saying to them that very thing that they believe and how they organize their lives daily is not real. And they feel like if they let their guard down, that they're going to become vulnerable and a perpetual victim. So there's some psychological things going on because
But see, this is what I don't miss about America. I'm sorry to cut you off, man, but this is what I don't miss about the United States personally. You know, because I mean, I did my PhD. I'm in Canada right now. I did my PhD in Scotland, right? So I'm always struck by how different the response to this field is in the United States and out of it, right? So when we're not in the United States, it's hard for me to explain to people how this is an issue at all. Scholars abroad don't get it. They meet Black male studies scholars. They think we're brilliant. They see the research. They don't see the problem, right? But our intellectual culture, like you're saying, is based around my identity. So if you challenge my identity politics, you're challenging me, right? Absolutely. You have a problem with me now. So it's personal. Absolutely. It's not intellectual anymore.
Absolutely.
You know?
And that goes back to this whole idea, like, why are we talking about dialectics and dialogical processes if we can't take part in them? And it's part of the doctrine. It's like when you're in these spaces and you're like, that don't sound right. Hold up. And you almost, I'm saying entire fields are built around this. I am telling you that as in the counseling field is built around humanism, intersectionality. Of course, they have neuroscience with that, but they have intersectionality, humanism, Rogerian type of psychodynamics, but even more feminism. It's all you never even had to pick up a book that said, and no one ever had to tell you that it's feminism. But the way that it's all concocted together is very feminist at its core. And I'm not saying, it's like, the dreaded feminists. I am saying that it is all about identity for white women, so that white women can also be. Let me just give you an anecdotal experience with me. As reading one of my students' comps, again, when I realized it was a major problem that I already knew existed, is now I'm now in my first year, been a professor, and I'm reading this paper where this young white lady is responding to a prompt where she's the supervisor to someone who's her supervisee in mental health, psychology, counseling. There's always this relationship where you bring on the new therapist, right? Or psychotherapist. So what she started to use was her intersectional framework to kind of help her deal with this situation with this Black man who's older than her. And what she naturally does is say, well, he's Black, so he has an oppressed identity. He's older than me, so that's a privilege. I'm white, so that's a privilege. I'm a woman, so that's oppressed identity. So by the end of it, she made herself more oppressed than this Black man. And I'm sitting there like, because his maleness made him more superior or privileged than a white woman. I mean, I'm not even talking about a Black sister. I'm saying a white woman utilizing this framework. Some people say you utilize it wrong, but look, I'm sorry. I've heard Dr. Crenshaw say it in so many different ways where she talked about these compounded experiences and different ways that seem accumulative. You know what I mean? And so and then she'll say something different. But what I'm saying is, even if she didn't intend it, we know something about systems. We know things about structures. Even if you didn't intend it to make it serve or work the way it is, it's continuously putting out that type of outcome, and it will not change unless you disrupt it. And intersectionality is a major issue in our community.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, if people read Black Male Studies Scholars more, they would know that we found this link. Crenshaw cites a philosopher, Catherine McKinnon, who makes a categorical ontological distinction, meaning they're fundamentally different things, men and women, based on men's ability to sexually violate women. So as Black men, you're still a man. That's what they mean when you said when you have male privilege. This is what I was talking about. The assumption is your masculinity is defined by your ability to harm women, right? But just speaking to what you're saying about like how intersectionality is prominent in these dominant white institutions. I've been up here in Canada like just now a year, right? I'm looking at AI. They just published an AI strategy. The military up here just published an AI strategy. You would never guess that they have a chapter in their strategy on AI ethics, and they say they want to use AI in line with intersectionality. The Canadian government has an intersectional analysis tool that allows them to take in the experiences of race, gender, and class. Okay, so what these Black PhDs and activists in the United States think is radical, it's well in line with major white fighting forces, major bureaucracies, major institutions that dominate and control Black people all around the world. It's not a threat to them.
So let me back up a bit. So part of what I've been seeing, Brother Shabazz already spoke about it a bit, as far as people saying they're outright saying that they haven't read the work of Black male scholars, and I want to be clear again, and I think you responded to dear Brother Gilmore when you said that there's manospheric factions that are kind of like utilizing some of the talking points or what have you. I don't know. I was multitasking, so I don't know exactly what you said there.
No, that's the accusation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Any person, any random account on Twitter who has a loud opinion and they don't like, they deserve the title of Black Male Studies now. Right? If you say something they don't like, now you're part of the manosphere. You're red. Right? You just are what they say you are.
Right. And I have my issues with the manospheres, definitely. I mean, because I put them on the flyer too. They want to know why. I put feminism on there. I put manosphere. I put FBA. I did not say radical Black feminist. I didn't go, no, look, if you're a radical Black feminist and I just put feminism or intersectionality and you're saying you're making the delineation that you are a radical Black feminist, I don't know why you're protecting me saying feminism. Because you're completely delineating. Are we fighting about a word? Well, you don't know about radical Black feminism. I said, well, most people don't know about Black Lives Matter's grassroots. But I don't think that most people who are part of the Black Lives Matter Black grassroots will misunderstand what people mean when they say Black Lives Matter has done this and done that. They understand that they are two different factions. So when I use the word feminism, white feminism, intersectionality, why am I getting so much pushback? Or well, you should. It's been said. Well, you should speak to the radical radical Black feminists. Look, I can't do everything. I'm talking about what I see in academia. I'm working on what my students are struggling with, because my students, as I'm going back to that point, they struggle with the idea of seeing, as I'm telling you, they struggle with seeing Black men as human. They know they're human because I asked them, what about your brother? What about your uncle? What about your nephew? But the fact is, the theory is not really applicable in their lives. But when they're writing and they're thinking, when they see something go down, they automatically, that stuff start kicking in. The indoctrination kick in when something happens. So it's okay until something happens, and then you believe it. And why am I saying this? People want to know why I think it's important to be clear about femicide and how it's different than the murder of all Black women or all women or what have you. And I'm not the person later kind of clarified what they said, But I wasn't really coming for that person. I was really saying that, well, let me say this. People struggle. This is what I realized, brothers, is that people struggle to differentiate between their ideologies, frameworks, models, theories, paradigms, ideologies, and the people. So if I say something like LGBTQ plus movement, they automatically think I'm talking about a person who identifies as same-gendered loving. That is something very different. The same thing. The conflation of patriarchy with black men, I would argue. You are now saying that black men are patriarchal, and black men are also feminists. See, the thing is, so when I say feminist, I'm not talking about black women. I'm telling you, I'm a highly trained black feminist.
Exactly.
But the thing is, you think I'm talking about a black woman. See what I'm saying? And I'm talking about feminism as a theory.
Right.
I'm telling you, I'm a highly trained, unconscious black feminist.
Right.
And I'm saying that because in it, and people say, where does theory show up? It's just in the halls of academia. But I had to remind people that as a psychotherapist, you use theory with your clients. You use theory as a police officer. The theories dictate who can commit intimate partner violence. As a researcher, the theory dictates the type of assessments, evaluations, the questions,
Absolutely.
the ideas with those theories. So those theories are very dangerous. And I think that we have to be able, I'm arguing that we have to be able to have the dialectical process that we argue and we stream about. Right. And we have to understand and differentiate between what is harmful and what is not. So again, I'm just going to say, don't conflate. And this is my argument. I know this is a little different, but the reality is, let's think about what feminism has done. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Doc. Think about what feminism has done to black men and women in this country. I'm talking about historically. And now you have to understand, if I was to now come and say, well, I'm a black patriarchist.
Right. Right.
And black patriarchists love women and children. It's Africana patriarchy. Right. What the hell is that going to do for you? That's going to be triggering. We have to understand this. So if I can sweeten up black patriarchy and Africana patriarchy, but that's going to trigger you. So I argue, at the least, think about a different term.
I mean, look, you hit this on the head, but you move so fast past it. But like, this is a major point right here. Everybody say they got a new form, and this is a common refrain with black male studies, right? So you make the criticism of black feminism, and then they lean into redefining it. So now it's not black feminism, it's state feminism, it's liberal feminism, it's decolonial feminism, it's radical black feminism, right? So now it's all these different forms, and they're beyond categorization now. But like you said, how is it that they all agree that black men are patriarchal? Isn't that amazing? Mm-hmm. Now, where does this idea come from? Where does the idea that black men are patriarchal and seek to maintain patriarchy through political activity, and it's expressed on the brutalization of their women by the first black feminist text by Michelle Wallace that was co-edited and helped pushed in the publishing press by a CIA operative in Gloria Steinem? That's just verifiable truth. That's where this idea comes from. Patriarchy wasn't a term that applied to non-white people before the 1980s. It wasn't applied. You can't find it anywhere. Matter of fact, black people were enslaved because black men were not patriarchal. They could not set up a home in patriarchal. So white men said they had the right to rule over non-white people, right? Mm-hmm. So now we all converge on this idea, but we got all these different titles, but we all agree with the same basic assumptions, right? That some of us are condemnable because our masculinity makes us hurt the others. And this is my thing. Look, let's analyze this. There's a lot there. There's a lot, like you said, to analyze with community trauma, substance abuse, domestic violence, unemployment, structural racism. But when we're talking about all these things, you know what we're not talking about? Counterinsurgency warfare.
Right.
Okay, so let's not pretend that these are the same things. We can talk about how JoJo made me feel at the store when he stepped on me. And like you said, he light-skinned to me and he got to cross the street before me. We can figure all of that out. But if we're doing that, we're not talking about the police state. We're not talking about the similarities in the control mechanisms between Black America and Venezuela. We're not talking about the invasions of Haiti and the invasions of the ghetto today using the same types of militaristic tactics. And I think this is the problem with this stuff to me, because you have an obstacle to greater knowledge. Okay, there is no equivocation between the relationship Black men and women have to the relationship that Black people have to our oppressors. We're not each other's oppressors. We're not. So if you really want to talk about, racial types of warfare, if that's what we want to focus on, we got to make a decision. What are we gonna do?
But I think that's part of the reason why, like how you mentioned, counterinsurgency is often, redefined to mean something else. Because when you start talking about how the men are targeted for death, then if you were to bear witness to that, you would have to rethink your ideological frameworks that you're currently holding on to. And I don't think people are willing to do that.
I mean, and just think about this, man. Like we 300 years past the civilizing mission. We've seen white empires use feminism to conquer people. Look, man, when I get time tomorrow, I can send you some of the policy analysis from female Marine Corps officers, U.S. policy analysts. Feminism helps them conduct warfare against non-Western people. It helps them, including women, and using their women to target those other women as auxiliaries to the white army. I mean, you got this one counterinsurgent, man. This dude, David Kilcullen. I mean, he has like 27 rules of counterinsurgency. He put together a book about 2013. One of his rules is to co-opt the women and children and alienate them from their men. Where do you think he got that from? A white man in America writing a military pamphlet about splitting up men and women. Where do you think he got that from? And this applies to all these other groups, but it don't apply to Black people. We exceptional. Black women just so magical, they just took up feminism on their own, and that don't apply to them. Come on, man.
Yeah, the Funky Geneva said, I don't know if y'all heard.
No.
The Funky Geneva said, if you haven't checked them out, he said that Black women stop coming for gay Black men and trans men because they're not your problem. It's Black men, cis, heterosexual, heteronormative Black men that are the problem in our community. Now he's identified as, I believe a same gender, or maybe not same gender, maybe just a gay guy. But and you can say these type of things because, again, there's this thing where we hierarchize from my standpoint, that if you utilize intersectionality, conscious or unconsciously, and you rank this person as being having a privileged position, you can do what you want to do to them. And I understand that's a scary concept there, but understand that I'm not talking about white people. I'm talking about in our community. And I see that people struggle with this idea because they believe if I say that a lighter brother or sister, we need to have the talk with them, they think that this now translates into what we have to do with white people at large. You know what I mean? And I'm saying, look, that's a conversation to be had, but that's not what I'm saying. I typically kind of agree with Dr. Amos Wilson that that, yeah, that's good old white people, but we're talking about individuals versus the group. That's a difference. But I think we have to also understand the difference between what's going on internally and what is going on in this internal colony that we find ourselves in, and those who dominate that particular or whatever rule that particular colony or those colonies. I think we have to. I don't think we do a good job of really differentiating these things. And again, what I teach in multiculturalism is this idea around diversity, and everything becomes a culture. Your sex, your gender, they ain't talking about no class, and they ain't definitely they don't even want to talk about race. I keep telling you, race is like you smile at it, you talk about social economic status, but not really class, and then you go to gender, sexuality, ability, age, and all these other things that have elders fighting youth and youth fighting elders, and elders don't understand. It's a new generation, and there's no rules. It's a very anti-cultural type of thing where there can't be any rules because it's very individualistic. I'm not saying people aren't different, but what I'm saying is we begin to fight over our differences, and we're going to always have differences. But these differences are very, and what we struggle with it is to understand these are very different. There's always going to be internal diversity in how people think things ought to be done, which is very different than how you're being oppressed through race and class. And I don't think when we struggle with that. Go ahead, bro.
Well, I think that's very interesting that you said. I've seen I know who the brother is you're talking about, but that the idea that the black man is the enemy in our community, it's like it made me think of like one of the laws in counterinsurgency warfare is obtaining the support of the population not only through sympathy and approval, but active participation in the fight against the insurgent. In this case, the military age male becomes the enemy, right? We're the insurgent. We are the ones who are designated for death. And it's very interesting. So when we talk about black men being the enemy in our community, who does that serve? Who does it serve?
I mean,
right?
dude, look, I was just reading an article the other day. I was telling Rakeem the other day about it. There's an article, I think this is like 2024. There's an academic black feminist. She said that the real goal of black feminism is to break away from the black family. I didn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say that. An academic black feminist published this research and said from the 70s to today, if we read black feminist authors like Frances Beale, who theorized black women as the slaves of black men, that the real goal of black feminism is to break away from the black family and have black women's autonomy on their own. I think we see the culmination of that,
which is the conversation that me and you have often too, as how, and that leaves, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the white man sees that as he already sees the world as his brothel. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so when I separate the man from the woman, then I have access to her now, right? And we can see that again with a lot of the imperialist wars in the global South. You know what I'm saying? It's just that's the first thing that you made me think of whenever you said that, is like, hey man, he does see the world as his brothel, and if he has more access to a black woman who is, and I don't want to come off sounding like that, you know what I'm saying, but that's how he sees it, you know what I mean. I think that's something that people have to understand as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of psychosexual dynamics to how black people are managed. And I think this is one of the things that, for all the talk about race, class, and gender, it's not really got at by most professors, most academic discourse. It really can't explain to you how women of color are sexualized and assimilated selectively at the same time as their men are demonized and separated from the society as, savages and beasts. You know, and again, like you said, right? There's always going to be differences, in-group differences, right? But warfare is something that happens between in-groups and out-groups. There's an inter-group conflict happening there. This is what the black male study scholars focus on this phenomenon. It's not saying that there's no in-group differences. We acknowledge these. You know what? There's in-group differences between young and old people, but but there's no genocide of old people on young people. That's not happening. They're not equal. Older people have more money, status, and wealth. Men generally have more access to positive social value and wealth. But men in any society, they don't get in groups and genocide all of the women. Otherwise, the society will collapse.
Right.
What we find is that groups construct out groups. And whether there's on religion or caste or race, they kill those out groups. They conduct warfare against those out groups, right? And those men are killed. And what can be done to them can be done to the women and children connected to them.
Absolutely. And like when we interviewed Shoker and we read her book, like she talks about the assumption of and the link between masculinity and violence. You're with even the term military age male. Now you are presuming that since I'm a male,
I'm violent.
Exactly.
Right. And notice feminist theory does the same thing. Right. So we see the war machine institutionalize a link between violence and masculinity to justify killing kids as young as 8 years old with the press of a button. Then we see the radical black feminists do it, and we're supposed to have a debate over definitions like it's not functionally the same thing.
And how many
We're
of
all
those
playing dumb.
How many of those military age males were counted by the Obama administration?
Right.
None.
They
don't even count in this in the death
They're
count.
not civilians. Women and children are the civilians. The men, if he's a male, he could be violent, so we can kill him right now if he ain't do nothing. And this is how our radical black activists talk who want to intervene in our black community. We want to castigate and demonize men. We want to say masculinity is inherently linked to this violence and this patriarchal violence. So how is it we're imitating the thought patterns of slave masters and imperialists, but when you do it, all of a sudden it's a radical intervention?
Right. And I also think it would be people have to understand too, like what we just mentioned, these counterinsurgency war efforts abroad, like it doesn't have any link to colonial policing here in other colonized states, right? Like I want to say, I think I called you one time where I heard military age male on the news used on somebody that was like domestically, right? Like, and that was insane to me. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, look, I pulled up this book just to read this to y'all. This shit is worth reading, man. This is a public available book. This man helped write military manuals for your country. If you're a U.S. citizen, this man helped write military manuals for your country. This is what he says: engage the women. Rule number 19 of counterinsurgency: engage the women, beware the children. Most insurgent fighters are men. In traditional societies, women are hugely influential in forming the social networks that insurgents use for support. Co-opting neutral or friendly women through targeted social and economic programs builds networks of enlightened self-interest that eventually undermine the insurgents. You need your own female counterinsurgents, including others, to do this effectively. Win the women and you own the family unit. How does a white man in the 21st century talking about applying this halfway around the world, and we're expected to believe that all these narratives that come from the 70s and the downfall of COINTELPRO have nothing to do with this?
Let me give you a something, y'all. Somebody said something earlier, and I'm here trying to process. I appreciate your time, and I'm certain we're going to wrap this up pretty soon. I don't know how y'all look on time, but one of the things I'm thinking of, I can't remember which one of you said this. I'm gonna speak to the point. One of the things in introducing, let's say, more family-based frameworks to those who identify as feminists or have feminist leanings, so let's say someone says, well, family, I'm family first, or men and women working together. they take that the responses I get to someone saying black men and black women working together is that is patriarchal. That is white supremacy, that's white patriarchy, because they're saying black women and men work together. And I'm saying this for a very particular reason around trauma. And so black men and black women to them equal white women doing all the work. And this is how these are the responses I get. It's I said, so when this particular theorist says black men and black women and children working together, they say, no, we tired of that. We tired of having to do the work. We're tired of having to do all the heavy load and doing all this type of thing. But now keep in mind what the theorist said was black men and women and child, and not even, and then some people also, the other response becomes, well, what about those who identify in the LGBTQ community? So now because you left out a pronoun or what have you, that becomes a problem. And then two, and I'm not making mockery of this, but it also becomes a problem because even the response is, well, I don't care what your sexuality is, black men and women and children at some point have to work together. That has nothing to do with your sexual orientation or what you do in the bedroom. Black men, women, and children have to work together. And then also another thing I've noticed, I'm just showing you the trauma. See, the trauma in the theory dictates and guides the trauma because it's the mythology. People who have struggled with trauma are dealing with mythology many times and made up thoughts and threats. And not to say there's nothing true about it, but it's over the top. Dr. Joy DeGruy speaks about it. She speaks about that your belief system is out of whack. So again, I lost my thought, but what do y'all say, brothers?
No,
what y'all look like on time? Y'all good for another 5, 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, I'm good for 5, 10, 15. Yep. You know, it's Dr. John Henry Clark once talked about how we became confused whenever we ceased to see ourselves as captives and began seeing ourselves as citizens.
Mm-hmm.
When has the black woman or the black man been the enemy over instead of the person that brought us over here and kept in and has us in the condition we're in to this day? Right? Like a lot of these people who will point the finger at black men as the enemy of black people. In a lot of cases, a lot of them don't have a problem with Europeans in proximity to whiteness. They're taking some white money.
Mm-hmm.
They,
mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not, I won't front. I mean, some of them marrying white people. You know what I mean? Like if we're being real,
Some of them what?
and some of them are marrying white people.
Oh, okay.
Hey, love who you love. It ain't my business, but I'm saying that to say, whenever we cease to understand that this European, the one who enslaved us for 400 years, the one who colonized us, is the one who is responsible for the condition that we are currently in, instead of blaming black men for, it's like I just like how convenient is that? I just don't understand. When did we lose that concept? When did we lose that idea? When did this European and his systems of oppression cease to be the enemy? When did white hegemony cease to be the enemy? When did capitalism and Western imperialism cease to be the enemy? And how were you able to replace that with the black man being the enemy? You know what I'm saying? Like Myron, like serious, like what would you say? Like how did that happen? Because we seem to understand at one point what the enemy was, and now we've moved to something where people seem to be confused and don't even understand what the fight is about at this point.
Yeah, man. Look, I think the 1950s and the emergence of the United States as a real global empire. What it allowed was the creation of a new black middle class, right,
Mm-hmm.
through the university to be assimilated into managerial functionary positions that used to be solely exclusively for whites: judges, therapists, professors, teachers, nurses, right? And in part of that process, we now have a majority female population of a black middle class educated elite that produces the ideological justifications for the police state that's in place. I think that's what we're seeing,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're seeing these institutions, back in the 1830s, 1930s, used to have white scientists and white medical doctors do this stuff. These institutions have evolved to be able to assimilate select members of the target group to do the ideological work now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think that right there is, it's some scholars trace back to Guatemala from the
Mm-hmm.
United States in particular. There was a push to do this in the 1980s by educating Guatemalan girls into anti-nationalist, pro-US ideology. But it really goes back to the Philippines and slavery itself. That division in education. Even when you look at the colonization of Native Americans, you've
Excuse me.
seen a stereotyping of Native American men as brutal to their women. And then the education of their women, that white society, assimilation, the labor market, Western ideals, that's superior, right? And so I don't think it's accidental that
Yeah.
you get these types of discourses from the university or these types of ideas in even radical leftist spaces that basically agree with the worst tropes you can find from slave master journals about
Mm.
black men.
Yeah.
That when they're alone, they beat women, they harm women, they kill them every so and so, and we need more police.
Mm. Yeah, that's deep. And in a way, right, that justifies the criminalization of the
Okay, I
black
can't hear you
male.
no more, Rakeem.
I said, in a way, that justifies the criminalization of the black male and the revolutionary element within the community. Is I don't know. Is my yo? I'm not sure
Yeah, the
if
sound went out.
yeah.
I heard you.
No, I can't hear
Okay.
you.
You can't hear him?
No, I can't hear.
Oh, I heard him say that my sound went out. So I think
Hmm.
I think one of the things I heard you say is that it finds itself even into radical black
Yeah, I don't know.
leftist. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah, I got you now. Yeah.
Oh, radical left black spaces, Africans. I'm gonna say African center spaces. I'm saying all the spaces because I'm saying a lot of spaces. I'm saying
Yeah.
people who don't even have a label, right? Look, because I don't, people going like Dr. Clark says. He says people will say you said what you didn't say and stubbornly refuse to say what you truly said or understand what you
Hmm.
truly said. So what I notice is even in Brother Shabazz, as you highlighted earlier, is that people are saying things and they're saying they're not even reading the things. And I noticed that again, it's not about, for me, only something that we find in academia. It has become a part of pop culture. And it gets worse when it's in pop culture because I tell some people you're not even a good feminist. Because I mean, you would be better if you did study, because you're not really being a real good one. And what I mean by that is sometimes people begin to form new ideas in how we engage one another, but not also do their part in being a feminist. I mean, I'm just honest. Like I was taught that I don't know what you all think about this or whatever, but I've been taught a lot of things as a therapist. Like chivalry, don't even do it. You have to ask. It's all types of things. And it doesn't always, from my standpoint, it's not always something that really works in our community. But I as a therapist, I'm very careful. So I do practice things in that way. Because I have to be intentional. But yeah, I have to be intentional. But then I also see how it impacts us culturally. But then
can I respond to something real quick, Doc?
Okay, go ahead.
Because I just, brother says our women have allowed themselves to be used against their own population and they are now our enemies. See, that's not what we're saying. That ain't what we're saying. That's not what we're saying. And that's how shit gets mischaracterized. Right. When we're talking about counterinsurgency, you have to understand that these are very, very sophisticated mechanisms that they have put in place to win the hearts and minds of people. And it's not, and although they target the hearts and minds of children, it's not like men aren't included in that as well.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? But so no, Black women are never our enemy. That is not what anybody from Black male studies is saying.
I mean, yes, I'm so glad you pointed that out. That's what we call a fallacy of division, right? So like when you think when we're talking about an entire group and that group has that trait, and you think that applies to every individual in the group, you've made a fallacy of division.
Right.
If you got the best basketball team, that don't mean every single player on that team is the best in a position. It means they're the best team.
Right.
Right. The traits of the collective don't apply to all the individuals, or vice versa. So I'm so glad you cleared that up, because that's not what's being said here.
No, not at all. We're talking about very sophisticated mechanisms used in warfare to target a specific part of the population. I can't even blame those 100% that fall victim to it, because that's how sophisticated it is. The shit that we're talking about, most people don't even understand in the first place. Right.
Absolutely.
When we talking about population levels, you're talking about a population level tactic.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see what I mean? You're talking about an entire group. So that doesn't mean that some of these people who are insurgents are not going to be females. That's not true. Right. That's a generality he's saying. That doesn't mean absolutely no women will resist. You will be wrong.
And it doesn't mean no men won't assimilate.
Won't submit. Right.
Absolutely. Because I keep having to repeat that Black men are feminists as well.
Absolutely. So I have to tell people this all the time. Feminism don't mean you a female.
Right. But I understand the war and so I'm glad that you pointed it out, and that's exactly what I was really going to move towards. Is that how do I pick it back up? What I noticed a lot, especially when people respond, whether they're in academia or not, especially academics who said they haven't read the things, is that, and when I say read the things, I'm talking about Black male studies. Is that they are even though they're not even studying feminism, because they're not really studying feminism or intersectionality, but they don't understand that they have studied it. And that's what I'm saying. They don't understand how it's intertwined in culture, how it's intertwined in the other literature that you read. So you don't even know the origin of the theories and the models and the frameworks and the laws and the rules and all these things, and where they're emanating, where they're coming from, and the lack of statistics to support the necessity of these ideas. Or the lack of, just someone's theory. And I think so, I think that some people even have to read Bell Hooks a little more, because some of the things that I argue, Bell Hooks even said. It's like, and what do I mean? Like, I'm trying to give an example. But Bell Hooks, some of the things you say, she would openly say that feminism had a lot of things wrong. And it didn't want to create it wanted to put women to usurp and replace their counterparts. It wanted them to become the power position. It wanted them to be free sexual beings and do what they want to do. Bell Hooks speaks about these things and how that it was a disaster. So, but what I am saying is that even Bell Hooks says these things, but you probably don't know because you haven't read Bell Hooks. And then you might have not read intersectional and multicultural frameworks and not know that the things, the ideas, and the way that we approach each other and the soft and passive ways that we communicate is so much tied in this multicultural, feminist, liberal type of frameworks. And they're guiding everything to the point where you're making assessment and you think you're coming from a place that is neutral, or it's just your own thoughts, it's just your own ideas, but really you're operating within these theories. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah. I mean, I just shared this link from a recent book I just finished by Courtney Thorson at the University of Oregon. It's an intellectual history of modern Black feminism going back to the 70s. And one of the things she shows is the point you're hitting on. You know, the popularization of Black feminist theory was not the academy. It was actually cultural magazine and periodicals. So Essence Magazine, Mrs. Magazine, trade book publishers like Random House, right? It's a reason why major Black feminist authors like Alice Walker, Toni Morrison, Michelle Wallace, that they don't have academic press books. They have public trade books. So like you're saying, right, the push for Black feminism was a cultural type of thing where you could run across a Black feminist author in a Jet magazine article and not know who that person is, not know that one of the editorial members on the board is a Black feminist. I mean, she talks about this all in this book. You know, Audre Lorde was one of the ones who kind of broke through to the academic scene. And then, of course, we know Bell Hooks. But the feminists before them did not have a foothold in academia, and they used their writing skills to push like trade books and magazines. And you see that in Bell Hooks as well, right? She writes a lot of books for the trade market, not academic style books. So, you know, while it has a hegemonic place in academia now, it wasn't always that way, you know?
Right. Because it's definitely the theory, like these frameworks aren't complete. But what academics do is take them and utilize them in their own work. like no one's really reading Kimberly Crenshaw's ideas around intersectionality and jurisprudence or its origins and all that type of thing. They just take the little framework and they take it and do the most with it.
And I mean, so, you gotta imagine my surprise hearing it up here, right? You know, like Canada don't even got a constitution. Like they still governed by the king of Europe. They're talking about intersectionality up here. They have no idea that it comes from, you know, this lady's interpretation of Supreme Court law.
Isn't it wild though? Like whenever you look at some of the part of the origins of Black studies departments in America and the Black nationalist ideas that were, you know, that created these departments and that were being taught through. It's like that had to be co-opted and let's think about like the revolutionary student movements all across the United States. You know what I'm saying? Like, what now? How much Black nationalism or Pan-Africanism is being taught in our universities? What's acceptable and what's not?
And when it's taught, it's always through this lens, right? It was dominated by Black men who wanted to re-enslave Black women. So it's bad for that reason. I mean, Michelle Wallace in her book, she said all nationalism is bad and against women, anti-woman, all of it.
So that's what, I guess that's what my question is. So what would be the answer to our plight? What what do we use to liberate ourselves, right? Because it seems like, because I mean, didn't you? I know we've talked about this a lot, but it's Black August. What did they say about George Jackson?
Right, right. This is another thing I think with the revisionism in Black feminist literature, right? So you get like these major Black feminists like Joy James, right? Major Black feminist, right? Makes her name as a young scholar, calling Du Bois a patriarchal sexist, right? She does stuff on prison abolition, prison literature, and there's no major body of criticism against Bell Hooks for saying this. Bell Hooks wrote this in 2004. She said George Jackson was imitating patriarchy by engaging in revolutionary violence. Now there's a critique by Joy James in 2024, 20 years later. Right? Where does this come from? Right? Because people are pointing this out. Right? People are pointing this out. Hey, well, how is there no debate in the literature about this? That we can celebrate Black August, frame ourselves as extensions of these people, but then condemn them and agree with those condemnations. Call them imitating white men for displaying courage to fight against their oppressors.
Yeah. And I think from a mental health standpoint, I think about, I'm not sure if you two heard of the book called The Protest Psychosis.
Right. Yeah, I heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, where the individual, the person, I think his name is Metzel, speaks to this idea of how those revolutionaries, Black nationalists, and so on, so forth, and so the like, typically men, Black men, were diagnosed as having schizophrenia at higher levels. And if you know that the institutionalization of and putting people away, and they were putting people away in these particular what do they call them back then, y'all? Not wards, mental,
the psych wards,
psych wards and things of that nature, because they spoke about revolution, they were operating in protests and doing all types of things, civil disobedience, what have you. And they were diagnosed and put away. And these were typically men, women too. And I'm going to say, again, that comes from ideas, that comes from theory, that comes from diagnoses, that comes from people's theoretical understanding and diagnostic or diagnoses of Black men, women, and children. And I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna turn it back over to you to close out. For me, if a Black woman is hurting, a Black woman is being done wrong, a Black child is being done wrong, or a Black man is being done wrong, it's impacting us all. If what you see is privilege in one aspect of our community, if you believe men are privileged or women are privileged, it's impacting us all collectively negatively. And I think it's very difficult to separate and measure who's being oppressed more. And that's what we're pretty much doing with these type of frameworks. Because if Black men, the data is there, are being hurt in different ways. If you want to talk about difference, let's talk about that. And Black women are being hurt and manipulated in different ways. And Black men are being manipulated and hurt in different ways. But the reality is, you hurt one aspect of the community, the entire community has to feel the consequences and the impact of that. So, Doc, I'm going to let you close out, and I'm going to let Brother Shabazz have the final words, and then we're going to get up out of here. I appreciated the conversation, the time, all that type of thing. I didn't open up the line because we've been going at it.
Yeah, no. I got nothing much else to add, man. I really appreciate you for inviting me, I
appreciate that.
Yeah, likewise, man. Make sure y'all check out me and Dr. Gilmore's podcast again, Algorithms of Empire. Just type it in on YouTube. And again, I echo your sentiments, Dr. Asar. Look, at the end of the day, we want freedom, justice, equality, and liberation for all our people, men, women, Jamaicans, Haitians, African Americans, and so on, right? Because there were two parts of this conversation, obviously. one was the diaspora wars, one was the gender wars. But as Dr. Gilmore has pointed out, as you have pointed out, and as I have strived to point it out, at the end of the day, we are collective. We are Black people. We are people. The more we fragment ourselves, the weaker we become. You know what I'm saying? So I just like to appreciate, say thank you for allowing us to come through and build, and definitely had a good time.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you too. It's family. I've been a little rusty. I've been out for, and so I didn't get to really engage with the chat like that. I didn't ask you to like the video, share the video, do all the things. Y'all know what to do. Make sure you hype it up on the other end. Make sure you leave some comments when this video uploads on the other end. Again, I appreciate my dear brothers here. I look forward to having more conversations going forward. And I ask us to, as Dr. Cleo Monago say, he said, have the courage to listen. Have the courage to listen. Have the courage to listen, and have the courage to read before you vilify. Have the courage to read, because there are some wonky aspects, and people will take and weaponize that which has been documented. And people can get things wrong, even including Black male studies. But let it be wrong and it not be vilified. My last word is this. We have to, I know it's difficult, but we have to have the courage to look at things through our own frameworks. Look at things with a new set of lenses. Because if you're using European white patriarchy, or as I call it, the white matriarchy, I'm sorry, I don't let white women off because they work together. If you're utilizing any of their frameworks as a way to, I'm not saying, look, at the core of examining Black frameworks, African-centered frameworks, lots of times you're going to come up short because you're utilizing the system to critique that which is supposed to liberate us. And that is a wrong way of utilizing theory, models, lenses, or what have you. Family, until next time, we appreciate you. I'm going to say signing out, peace and power.
When you claim you're African, you're going to get your mind back.
Generalized Black woman is doing this and being this. That is that is irresponsible.
No,
when you claim you're African, you're going to get your mind
showing
back.
me,
Black and I'm proud. Claim you're African, black and I'm
because I
proud.
think
I'm telling
that
you.
if
When you claim you're
as
African,
a
you're going to
person
get your
who
mind
has
back.
a page,
What is the status of people
Claim you're
with
African,
half
black and I'm proud. I'm
FBA?
telling you. When you claim you're African, you're going to get your mind back.
That's why I was laughing, because
Black and I'm proud. Claim you're African, black
I'm
and I'm
not saying the
proud. I'm telling
framework
you.
doesn't do a thing, but
Become a part of it.
we've been
Embrace it.
Forward to Black men
Become a
being the
part of it.
masters, being
Embrace
in
it.
control. We must
Become a
have
part
our
of
own,
it.
only
Embrace it.
that those one of the
Become a
best
part
stories I've
of it.
ever heard.
Embrace it. When you claim
out
you're
of
African, you're going
mastery
to get your mind
that
back.
mental growth takes
Black
place.
and
It's
proud.
been
Claim
misled
you're
by
African.
leadership,
Black
for
and
instance,
proud.
that
I'm
think
telling
that
you.
you can consume.
When you claim you're African, you're going to get your mind back. Black and I'm proud. Claim you're African. Black and I'm proud. I'm telling you.